It is Wednesday, January 15th, 2025. Welcome to the Queen Anne's County Board of Ed meeting. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Can I get a motion to resume open session?
Can we resume, go back into open session?
Second.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Before we approve the agenda, I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda that after our open session, we go back into closed session.
Yep, so just a motion to amend the agenda.
Motion to amend the agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Has everybody reviewed the agenda for tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I get a motion for approval?
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented
Second.
With the amendment.
with the amendment?
Okay, all in favor?
Review the
Aye.
closed
Aye.
agenda items.
Did everybody get a chance to review the open and closed minutes for the December 4th meeting?
We gotta,
We need
We gotta
to
review the
this
closed
one.
agenda item,
closed session agenda items.
1.03.
You good for me to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got
Go
closed
ahead.
session.
The board met in closed session. This meeting was closed under general provisions, Article 3-305B. We met to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction. Any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice, to discuss public security if the public body determines that public discussions would constitute a risk to the public or to public security, including the development of fire and police services and staff, and the development and implementation of emergency plans. Topics that were covered were for applicants for new hires, resignations, transfers, and any other personnel matters. And the reason we met in closed session was a public discussion of applicants' and employees' names and personal information that could discourage people from working with the board and contain sensitive and personal information that is protected from disclosure under MPIA. To consult with counsel to obtain legal advice regarding disposition of school system property, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice regarding Title IX regulations, and to consult or obtain legal advice regarding employee separation. And we met because the substance of discussion is protected by the attorney-client privilege. We also discussed topics to school safety and security measures, plans, and review. And the reason it was held in closed session was for public discussion of specific security measures and plans would constitute a risk to public security.
Thank you very
Sure.
much. All right, now, approval of the meeting minutes. Can I get a motion?
Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The fun part, let's do awards.
Let's do it.
Not Mr. Smith, no hiding in the back.
Good evening, everyone. Our best time of the evening as we do our awards. The first one is our Energizer Bunny Award. This award is given to a staff member or volunteer who keeps on going. It is sponsored by Bayview Financial with Mr. Chip Brittingham and Mr. Wayne Humphreys, if they'll please come forward. And our nominating person this evening is our principal, Teresa Farnell, from Centerville Elementary School. If she'll please come forward. And our Energizer Bunny for this month is Mrs. Lori Diesel, if she'll please come forward. Mrs. Farnell says it is an honor to nominate Mrs. Lori Dizell for the Energizer Bunny Award for January. She is the administrative secretary for Centerville Elementary School and goes above and beyond her expected duties. For example, our front office secretary was out on maternity leave, and she did both jobs. She came in at 7:15 every morning and left at 4:45 once all the students were safe and sound at home. She is an organizer of all things and supports all staff, and I don't know what we would do without her. She stays for almost every single evening event, like our family dances, our winter concerts, and various other family nights. She does all of this with a smile on her face and with a humorous and giving attitude. Centerville Elementary School loves Mrs. Dizell, and we are so grateful for all that she does for our staff, our students, and our families. So thank you so much.
Just make sure that you can see the camera. Okay. On three, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Our next award is a Spirit Award. This is given to an individual who embodies the spirit of Queen Anne's County Public Schools. Mrs. Kenna, unfortunately, isn't able to be here. She's running a little behind. She had a student who was at school, and she was waiting on their parents. So unfortunately, I don't think she's here right now. So I'm actually going to skip that one and come back around to see if we can give her a little bit more time to come. Oh, they're both her. Okay, well, we'll have, are both of our people here? Okay, all right, well, let's go ahead and go forward then. So again, nominated by Mrs. Tracy Kenna, the principal of Centerville Middle School, and our January Spirit Award goes to Mr. Christian Tolson. If he'll please come forward. If you want to do the honors of doing that for me. Mrs. Kenna says that Mr. Chris Tolson is a very important part of keeping spirits high at Centerville Middle School. He is instrumental in keeping the spirits of the 8th grade team of teachers up. He is also first to volunteer to assist with school-wide activities, even if it involves singing or dressing up as Cruella de Vil.
True, I did dress.
Okay. Or to volunteer for the bus room full of middle schoolers every day. As our resident after-school detention monitor, he has made it his mission to form relationships with the students serving detention, so much so that they're excited to have him as their science teacher in the future years. And of course, he's also a fantastic science teacher and a favorite of our students and their families. Mr. Tolson embodies Centerville Middle School's spirit all the way. And for the past 20 years, he has made Centerville Middle School a happy place to work, and he makes us all feel like a team. So thank you so much, and congratulations. And I'm sure you know the student who was still there waiting on
I
a
did, I
parent.
was just with her.
So, yeah, so you know for sure why she's not here,
Yes.
and I know that you forgive her for that.
Mr. Dreyer, I just need you to, there you go. Yep. All right, on 3, ready? 1, 2. Is that Mrs. Kenna? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. And as Mr. Kibler shared, the next one is our Shining Star Award, who is also nominated by Mrs. Tracy Kenna. And our January Shining Star is Mr. Corby Laughlin. Mrs. Kenna says that Mr. Corby Laughlin is the Peels teacher at Centerville Middle School. As the ringleader of the district-wide program, he is responsible for planning, instructing, and assessing all of the curriculum taught to the students in the program. He's also responsible for managing behaviors and helping students make better choices. This is where he truly shines. He is an expert in building relationships with his students, and as a result, they are always willing to go above and beyond for him. They complete their work, they manage their behaviors, they show success within their program, and they build on what they have learned to meet their potential. Due to Mr. Laughlin's hard work within this program and his unwavering support of his students, they have bright, shining futures in high school and beyond. So thank you very much for your dedication. And another round of applause for all of us. And that was everybody.
Sometimes they move.
Both of those out here. Paper, you just write it down.
Hey, Carrie, do we need to go get the other?
I can get it.
I think so.
Just get them in that, till we get in the door. Then I go.
Congratulations, thank you.
Okay. So before we get to the next agenda item, I'd like to read a little statement. During closed session, Dr. Salins notified the board that she will not be seeking reappointment at the end of her current contract term, which ends on June 30th of 2025. We really appreciate Dr. Salins' 33 years of service to the public education in Maryland and her 4 years of service to Queen Anne's County Public Schools. In the coming weeks, the board will begin the process of selecting a new superintendent to serve after Dr. Salins' term expires. We will keep the public updated and informed as we embark on this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
We're gonna move to board involvement, and I'm gonna start on the end and work our way back.
So I was able to attend a bunch of holiday and band and strings concert, and as always, all the schools put on an amazing show. Give some kudos to Sellersville. They were able to host their first Christmas parade, and there was a bunch of different schools. I saw the clay team. They had a big float. The kids in the band and the strings program were marching and throwing candy, and I was amazed at how many people had come out and how many people were actually in the parade. So good job to them for their first parade. And then I was able to attend the first MEAB budget session.
I, sadly, due to the holidays and snow and kids, and I was not able to attend any outside events other than ones that were handled at my children's school. However, their school did an amazing job, from Elf on the Shelf on top of the building to Christmas parties, and the unwavering dedication and commitment of our teachers to make sure that the holiday season was fun and festive and the kids made some memories. But I have all the plans in the month of January to tackle it. Get out there.
I don't know, it's getting busy.
So I went to Stevensville Middle. It was the day of the reindeer games right before Christmas break, and I was able to meet the principal and a lot of the staff. And then the best part was watching the teachers versus students hockey game. So, and I even caught the puck, which I heard is good luck, but anyway. I guess the Giving the Edge Foundation came in and did a great field day for the students. And then I went to MABE training.
So I went and attended the Mistletoe Mania at Sutlersville Middle School. That was awesome. Lots of vendors out, lots of teachers doing lots of activities for the kids, and a great opportunity for people to do some quick Christmas shopping if you hadn't already started. I was a little behind, so it helped out a lot. And I also attended the legislative meeting for MABE. So there's a lot of new activities that are being taken care of and in support of schools and our education systems.
This month I was able to attend the Winter Dance concert put on by Miss Tyler. That was pretty fantastic. She did a fantastic job. Brought in some outside individuals that have years upon years of dance experience, and it evidently showed that it's coming into our classrooms that she teaches during the day with the skills the students are actually developing. And I was also able to attend one of the wrestling matches, one of the duels that Queen Anne had. Unfortunately, they fell in that duel. And as Kendra said, I've been real busy this month, so I was out of town for a couple weeks and we had the kids. So those were the only two things I could get into. But tomorrow we have a big game. We got Kent Island versus Queen Anne. boys and girls varsity basketball. So I will be out there showing my support tomorrow here at the Queen Anne's High School.
Very nice. All right, our student board members. Who wants to go first?
I will.
Okay.
So I don't really have a lot to tell you guys because I feel like January is almost over. But January 17th, our hybrid classes have their final exams, and then we also have a winter dance from 6 to 8, the Blizzard Ball. On January 20th, school's closed, yes. And then the 21st, final exams for first and second period, and then the next day, third and fourth, and then on the 30th, we have a scheduling information night, and the 31st, reports are emailed home.
Thanks. All right. So this week we have 10th grade MCAP testing for Algebra 1 and English Language Arts. I know tonight there's the JV basketball games going on right now, Kent Island versus QA. And then tomorrow, of course, as mentioned, I'll hopefully be there for that. And then we have finals, of course, on the 21st and 22nd of January. And then makeups are the following week, I think, on the 23rd. Wait, no, that's the same week. Not the following week. And then we come back after finals on the 28th for the start of the second semester, which is exciting, already halfway through. And then we're looking forward to Dr. Salins, your superintendent visit on the 30th. And then the 31st, we have our Student of the Month ceremony, which is always well attended. That's always really nice when everyone comes together for that. And then February 1st, this is before the next board meeting, so I thought I'd mention, we have our Interact Club at our school. They sponsored the Polar Bear Plunge that will be going on at Sandy Point State Park. So that should be fun for everyone involved in that. And that's all, not too much.
Are you going to do it?
I don't think you know what? Maybe I will. Maybe I will.
Just guilt her into it.
I want to do it once, so.
Right on
Some
the
people
spot.
like it.
You know, this is recorded and going out to everyone, right?
Well, I'm taking that as a challenge, so maybe I'll sign up for it now.
There you go.
What day is it being held?
February 1st. If it's not too late, sign up.
I
say
think
that.
Well, for you, I bet you it's not.
Good luck, sweetheart.
Good luck.
Dr. Salins.
Yeah, so actually I want to kind of go off my normal, I did get an opportunity to get out to many of the schools and do lots of things, but I want to talk about the snow and the weather and where we are with everything. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone out there, and they know who they are, who helped to try their best to get us back in school. Everybody had their best effort out there to do it, but the weather just would not cooperate for us. It was unfortunate. So many people are wondering, because we had 2 days built into our schedule, of whether we were going to use both of those days to make up. Well, that, even though it's built into the schedule and the schedule is approved by the state board, we still have to go ask them to waive that day. So Martin Luther King will be a day off for students as originally planned, because the state board doesn't meet until the end of the month, and by the time they would get back to us, it would be too late, right? However, we will be putting in, we notified the board, we will be putting in for a waiver for President's Day. We do anticipate getting approval to go to school on President's Day. So we'd like to kind of get that out there and spread the word to please plan on being in session on President's Day as we move through the motion and the process to be approved at the state level. That puts us at basically that Monday. So originally we were slated for that Friday, I believe it was the 13th. That pushes us to that Monday, but also remember, we have the right to ask for a waiver. We might not be granted to not have to go to school and end on a Monday. It doesn't make a lot of sense to put all buses on the road for a half day on a Monday when you're closing down for the school year. So we successfully did that last year. We ended on a Monday. We asked for the waiver. It was granted. I don't know whether they would do that or not this year, and I don't know whether we're finished with our weather. So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but for right now, if we had no other weather events and we were approved to go on President's Day, our last day would be that Monday, and we would come to the board to ask to seek another waiver to end on that Friday. So we'll see. Nobody pray for snow. I know there's kids out there praying for snow right now. And I say, no more snow. So, thank you.
All right. This is when we get into citizens' comments. Before we begin, we ask all speakers to keep in mind the following guidelines. Speakers should sign the roster, including their telephone number and address. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes in length. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. Statements to the board should relate to a matter of general policy over which the board has authority. Comments about the actions or statements of individual staff members are not appropriate for public comments and should be referred to the superintendent of schools or the board president. If you have a specific question, the board will make sure an appropriate staff member responds to your question. The board respects your desire and right to convey your message freely, but asks as a courtesy to this board and our citizens that you show respect for all. Amanda,
D'Onofrio. You're gonna get it one day, you're gonna nail it one day.
I'm gonna-
I'll just keep coming back and you're gonna nail it.
I think you're gonna have to print it for me because it's the
It's
right
like that
look at it.
actor on, that really weird actor that was in that Full Metal Jacket.
I saw that.
D'Onofrio.
Yeah.
Same name, he's probably a cousin somewhere. Hello, everyone. Welcome, new board members. I wrote in a public comment last month. I wasn't able to attend last month's meeting, but I wrote in a public comment. Part of it was I'm happy to have new board members. I'm happy to have people who are going to hopefully think in new and different and critical ways. And it's nice to see some fresh faces. And part of what I wrote last month goes into what I'll say this month, but it is the value of our human resources. That is our greatest resource for many places, but especially an educational system where people are working with K through 12, very young children. So I think it's very important that we stick to what was in the blueprint goals, which I actually read through and really liked. I thought that was very well done. And I hope that we can stick to that in a better way. Part of sticking to that, I believe, though, comes into a bit of a conflict for me with the agenda item for later on tonight on the Tier 2 funding for $70,000 that is going to be benefiting 4 of the 8 Tier 2 schools. Knowing what I do about Tier 2 funding and the difficulty in being able to obtain that funding and put it to good use, I think that it would be nice if we had some other options that may benefit more than just 50% of the schools that are able to receive these funds. So I would ask that when you have to vote on this tonight, perhaps we can put a pin in it and come up with alternatives that might benefit more children at more schools. That would help empower our teachers and help empower our children. These funds are not easy to get. And I can come here and hear that they're not easy to get. But before we go ahead and spend it, let's see what we can do that has the greatest impact on the greatest number of our teachers and of our students, so that we can go ahead and follow those blueprint goals of having transparency and giving teachers a voice and respecting their opinions while they're struggling with increased class sizes and lack of support through staff members that are supposed to be there to help with tutoring or other vital things around our schools. One of the awards given tonight, I will point out, was given to a woman who was doing 2 jobs. And while she is fantastic, and I have seen her do her job, she is wonderful, it shouldn't be the necessity that she is doing 2 jobs. It shouldn't be the necessity that she has to do that. It's great that she did it, but they need the support. So if we have that money, put it to better use. Thank you.
Excuse me. Cecilia Mitchell.
Look at all those smiles. Happy New Year. My name is Cecilia Mitchell, and I'm the president of QACEA. Happy New Year. And before I go to my bullet points, because I didn't write anything out tonight, so be prepared for an ad-lib. When you mentioned the 20th being a holiday, let's be sure we clarify that that's for everybody, because somebody's going to hear it's just students, and then the question's going to be, well, what about teachers and staff? So that is still a day off for,
We can't have students in session without our teachers.
well, you know how people listen.
That is for all. Thank you for the clarification.
Sometimes people don't listen very well. I was like, my phone's going to blow up any minute. And welcome to the new board members. You guys got an invitation from our association to stop in our meeting. Dr. Salins and I have been talking in our monthly meetings about coalition building and relationships and how to move forward as we deal with legislative issues and budget crises, and that is a step in that direction. My next meeting with Dr. Salins is the 28th. We were able to reschedule that because of the holiday. And we'll be talking more, the two of us, about how we can move forward with that. So we'll put that on as an agenda item. With regard to agenda, I'm here tonight just to speak on the item that was just referenced with regard to the contract that's being presented this evening. Representing a body that was asked to take or return money back in light of a budget crisis that we know is likely to continue. We don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. Taking on new expenditures seems to me to be unnecessary. So I would encourage us to kind of step back from that. There are other things that are coming up tonight, things like desks and things that we use every day. And if we're setting priorities, I don't know why we need to take on something new when we need to be taking care of what we have. So I would ask you to just hold on that, please. So that's that. Thank you very much. Happy New Year, and hopefully I'll see some of you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have time left that I can use next time?
Doesn't roll over. It does not roll over. Ashley Luking.
Good evening, board members, executive team. I'm also here to discuss the instructional empowerment contract that is on the table tonight. I do not think it should be approved tonight without transparency into this company's selection as the most appropriate spending of our Title IIA funds. The county has cut reimbursement for necessary professional development, which this is not, and this contract does not specifically relate to any blueprint requirements. The sole source vendor document provided is weak at best, therefore requiring other options to be presented. A quick timeline for you. In 2017, Dr. Salins signed a multi-million-dollar contract with LSI in Caroline County. Looking at their Maryland report card data for 2018 and 2019, elementary schools made some improvements. However, all schools failed to meet annual targets for academic achievement. 3 of the 4 schools participating in this contract are middle and high schools. It doesn't make sense. In 2021, LSI went out of business, reorganizing under the instructional empowerment name you'll hear tonight. Currently, Caroline High School serves as a pilot, reading the book, The Power of Student Teams by CEO Michael Toth, where Dr. Salins is acknowledged as a reviewer. Administration and leadership attended his very costly conference in Florida over the summer in 2024. A conference is scheduled for June of 2025 at Chesapeake College with a stipend for attendees. Teachers, administrators, and employees fear retaliation in our current school climate. Over the past few days, I have been able to collect viewpoints to share anonymously for them. The following are their statements. I know I will run out of time before I can read all 13 of them, but they have been shared with board members and Dr. Salins. We have started this book study at Caroline High School. It does not show how this team strategy will be implemented and how to address the barriers. Dr. Salins is mentioned in this book, and kickbacks have come to our mind. The whole thing doesn't sit well with me. Why this program? Why now? I have not seen any data to support that this works. We should do a lot more investigating before we spend this much money. This isn't a solution. In upper grade levels and with challenging content, lower performing students lack the ability to lead instruction or participate in this model. They do not share the same background information or academic confidence. These students continue to fall farther behind without direct instruction. I'm taking part in the book study. The main problem I see is that the book is very theoretical. If it's going to be put in place, teachers need real professional development, including videos of implementation at various grades and in various content areas. There are some resources online, but they are less than impressive. The book outlines a program that would work under ideal circumstances. We don't teach under ideal circumstances. If students are placed in collaborative groups of 4, one is absent, one is unwilling to participate, a very real scenario, this simply doesn't work. We've been told that teachers aren't expected to use this every day, but it seems that it would have to be done frequently for students to learn how to collaborate effectively. pull up state report cards and show little to no evidence of success in high schools. I'm very concerned teaching a state-tested class with heavy content using student teams. Teachers from Caroline County told me it requires a lot of PD and observations. It puts more on teachers' backs. It goes on. It goes on. But thank you.
We do have your email, so thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ashley.
Coral Adams?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Sothersville, Maryland. I am here to speak today about the same budget item that's been coming up, the empowerment or instructional empowerment. I did not pilot this. In fact, I only heard about it recently, but I am working with one of the piloted programs, or I am piloting programs for next year's middle school curriculum. So this is the first time I've done that. Got a little bit of background on the kind of research that has to be done, the kind of vetting and qualifications that a curriculum has to meet. And just out of curiosity, I was searching on the interwebs for instructional empowerment. And the thing that bothers me is that I can't find any ratings and I can't find any peer review. As a professional, as a 20-year veteran in the classroom, peer review is really important. If we're gonna implement a new program into a classroom, I want to know as a teacher and as a parent that this is something that's been peer reviewed and shown to work. And I can't find that anywhere. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I fully believe that Ms. Passon has done much more research than I have. She's very competent, but it's problematic when I can't find anything. Whereas when you search other curriculums, when I search the programs that we have in place currently, it's much easier to find information and to find studies that back it up. So in my professional opinion, I don't support this, buying this program, because I don't think that it's going to it doesn't have the backup in the study that it needs. From a personal perspective, I'm currently teaching remediation in class because all of our people that taught remediation had to be let go and those positions had to be moved because of the budget crisis. So that was pushed on us teachers into the classroom. As it stands, I do not feel fully trained and competent in the program that I'm teaching, but I'm learning to fly this plane in the air like we do in education, apparently. So if next year I can teach it better, because I've done it this year, if we're implementing new programs, then it's yet again teachers who already have more work this year than last year, will have more work next year than we do this year, trying to figure out a program for our lowest performing students. We cannot risk programs that are not vetted. We cannot risk programs that we don't have 100% confidence in for students that are reading 2 and 3 and 4 grades below level. I have kids in my middle school class that are reading at a first grade level. I can't risk a year of them on a program that I don't know for sure is going to make a difference. I need to know for sure. I'm all for, as a former special educator, I'm all for multiple programs. I think that is great. It is so much easier to meet students' needs when there's more than one option, because one piece does not fit all students, but I can't find anything to back up that this is the correct piece to choose. So that's just my professional opinion. Take it for whatever you want, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that would be the list. Unless there's anyone else that did not happen to sign the sign-in sheet. All right. And we will move on to our Human Resources report. You're absolutely right, because there are no other questions, because we talked about it during closed session, because of what it is. I need a motion.
Can I make a motion to approve the January 8th, 2025 Human Resources Report as presented?
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. We'll move on to 602, Instructional Empowerment Contract. Ms. Passon.
Good evening, Happy New Year, President Bent, new members of the board, Dr. Salins, members of the executive team. I am Bridget Passon. My primary role with the district is as the grades 3 through 12 English Language Arts Supervisor. There are 4 title grants that live with the CNI team, and they are doled out. Apparently tonight, I've drawn the unlucky straw of being the Title IIA grant manager. Actually, I love Title II, and I believe in it, and I'm glad that all the people who spoke publicly are still here because I can address different concerns they brought up. I know we can't get in a dialogue, but I can certainly address what they brought up. So the Title II grant, of which I am in charge, is for the hiring, retention, and training, i.e. professional development of all educators in the school system. We are a small district. Every year we get our allotment from the feds. The allotment for FY24 was about 188 in total. Our allotment for FY25 dropped by about 35%. It's at around 150. So as grants work, they're not under the discretion of the grant manager. All decisions are collective decisions made by the executive team, CNI, stakeholders, qualitative data that Dr. Salins gathers when she does meetings with students and teachers, information we gather when we hear public comments, qualitative data we gather as CNI supervisors when we do our program monitoring visits. So a lot goes into making decisions for all our title grants. They are not arbitrary I don't go to Dr. Salins with the lump sum and she gives me my marching orders as to what to do with it. It's a collaborative decision and I come with all ideas based on what I've seen and heard. So I'm just giving you kind of the timeline of how I got here tonight. So in this past summer, we were able to braid FY23 and FY24 funds together because there was residual left over in FY23 for A&S to attend a conference hosted by Instructional Empowerment. And the focus of that conference was on student academic teams. And the basics of student academic teams, which is the professional development we're looking to bring to our 3 neediest schools in the county, is to increase student discourse, which is directly tied to neuroscience and the science of learning. Direct instruction by teachers is absolutely positively important and essential, but it can't make up the entire instructional time that kids are in front of teachers. They need to be engaged in productive struggle and inquiry and on working to solve a problem together. When we came back, we knew that we didn't have funding to bring student academic teams to our school. Sadly, as has been pointed out, we did have a reduction in staff, and a lot of the staff we had to let go was novice teachers, new teachers. By law, we're required to have a new teacher induction program that involves a week of induction and instructional coaches. That gets paid from Title IIA grants. Now, please keep in mind that we write the grant about 8 months ahead of the time that we start spending it. So it was September of this year, we realized that we had budgeted $80,000 for instructional coaches in the induction program, and we only needed about $30,000 of that. We did amend the grant with the hopes, and this may have been one of the public speakers referenced cutting reimbursement. We had hoped to pay our primary teachers for science of reading training that they have to get. We submitted an amendment to do that, and then we're told we can't use Title IIA dollars to fund what's mandated in Blueprint. So that seems counterintuitive. But that's the way that the law works and grant funding works. So then the wondering became, do we bring student teams, the 101, the first part of this instructional empowerment to our neediest schools? And so I was sent to find pricing. Obviously, I knew the data already because the data had come in, and we decided to do 1 school per level and kind of have them all in the feeder chain. So that's how those schools were decided: Sothersville Elementary, Sothersville Middle, and Queen Anne's County High School. To Ms. D'Onofrio's point, did I say it right? We would love to bring it everywhere. If we had the funding, it probably would have been a consideration, but this is all amended funding that we're trying to make good use of and bring our learning back to 200 staff members that would impact 2,000 students. There is a need for improved student discourse. Our teachers do incredible work Coral is an ELA teacher. I've been in her classroom and had a lot of fun in her classroom. We're doing great things when we have student collaboration, when we have student groups. They are part of instruction in any content about 3 times a week. But they could always be elevated. And I went through the training myself, and I saw instances where I was like, you know what? That grade level only needs a little bit. Or that grade level, they're going to need these 2 parts of the program to really bolster the student collaboration component of their instructional daily plan. So, and that was thinking that was shared because, yes, we were in Florida, but we were all at each other with our learning and excited to bring it back. Kent Island High School has TSI dollars. It's a completely different grant. They're a targeted school for improvement. They brought their learning back immediately and decided to do an initial book study of the book that explains student academic teams with their staff, with a plan then to use their dollars to bring the actual training, and it is a strategy, to their teachers in September for teachers to start practicing with next year during the 25-26 school year. And then I think the plan, I looked over Dr. Rankin's implementation plan simply because she shared it with me. She manages that grant. I manage Title II for 26-27 for it to be full implementation, in particular for their core content areas and all special education students. So that's that's where it is and what Title II dollars are used for. If I could buy desks or fix things with Title II dollars, I absolutely would. The piece to Title II is that everything that we do with it has to be in support of educators who are working with kids. I can't buy things for kids or buy furniture, but I can buy materials to help teachers deliver their lessons. I just want to make sure I respond to everything, which I hope I did. Yes, I think I did. So in short, I can get back to the statement that you're looking at on that yellow form that was created, but we are looking to bring the PD to the professional development to our teachers from these 3 schools. Kent Island is going to capitalize on that date range because we'll have 2 coaches from IE here. The professional development in and of itself is less than $6,000. Where the heavy funding comes in is we're buying kits for all the teachers so that the teachers have all the resources they need, the note cards, the placemats. They will get templates for how to make groups and how to monitor their groups. And then there's digital licenses that they can use to deepen the practice by monitoring student growth on that digital platform and interacting with other schools and districts who use this program, as well as getting tasks off of it for their particular contents. So I think tonight you've heard both sides of this, and as is life, and there are 2 sides to every story. You do have to vote on this. So I'll take any questions that you may have so I can further clarify this for you before you vote.
The first one. Go ahead. The first one I have is, which is a red flag to me, was reading the Instructional Empowerment Sole Source Provider. For Every Student Succeeds Act. At the very bottom, it says, Every Student Succeeds Act, Tier 3, moderate evidence from at least one well-designed and well-implemented quasi-experimental study, and that Every Student Succeed Act, Tier 4, promising evidence from at least well-designed and well-implemented correlational study with statistical controls for selection bias. The words that stand out to me are moderate evidence, experimental study, promising evidence, and a correlational study. This seems like, who would pick this as the best use of funds if this sounds like we're basically experimenting? We're the experiment.
So all that language is from the federal government. So there are 4 ratings when you are looking at a program, with 1 being the highest, 2 being the second highest, 3 being, there is a study out there that said we tried it, we had a control group and a group where we were using the strategy and it worked, and then 4 means we are looking to see if it works. A lot of what we do, a lot of PD, it comes in at a 4. So even the dollars that we use, and for the teachers who aren't going to this, I do have funding in this for elementary teachers to attend a national conference from all the schools who aren't getting instructional empowerment. So, and I have to submit those ratings when I write the grant, and I think in Title IV they do too. So when I see Tier 3, that's a pretty good rating when I'm asking for a strategy to be adopted.
So you're saying Tier 3, moderate evidence from at least one well-designed and one implement quasi-experimental study, that definition for Tier 3 is from the federal government?
Yes.
Exact words? So they didn't come up with that themselves?
No.
Okay. I have questions about the whole sole source.
Sure.
I'm sure we all do. Go
Yes.
ahead.
This is one of the weakest sole source things I've ever seen in my life. And
Okay.
I've done a lot with contracts in the government.
Sure.
Anybody can come up with a program and then name it whatever they want and basically say, I'm the only one that does this and they can't teach this anymore because you can go put your patent, you can go put your whatever you want on it. Your little stamp from the government says you're the only one who does it. But that doesn't mean that nobody else is doing it. So when we're looking at doing this contract, why are they there and why are we only getting a paper from this guy? Of course, I'm gonna write something. If I'm trying to sell my business or product, I'm gonna take and write something that makes it look like it's, wine and cheese night and make it good for everybody.
You're exactly right. And I looked at, so I did research on other consulting firms that do student academic teaming. The difference with instructional empowerment is that they have the resources for teachers to use packaged and ready to go, hard copy and digitally. And in the 4 others that I looked at, they didn't have the program packaged the way this one is.
But
And
that
as I-
still doesn't mean it's a sole source. You have 4 other programs that you just said that were there. It might not have the entire amount of everything that this one offers, but that's still not a single source. They're not the only one that's doing this one
But
type
they're
of
the
education.
only one that has the materials to support its implementation and usage.
Okay. So there are other businesses or programs that offer the same type of learning or teaching material.
It's not the same because it doesn't have these huge resources that are imperative for its implementation.
So the only difference is these guys will provide the resources at an exorbitant cost compared to the other ones that give you the same material, they just don't give you the resources to implement it.
They'll provide the resources, the coaching, and help us monitor it.
Okay, so
Which I
the
didn't
other-
find in the
so
other
the other
ones.
ones still have the same type of learning, they just don't give you the resources to implement it though. But I'm just saying, it's still not the only program that's out there.
IE doesn't own the term student-led academic teams. They're just the ones who studied it enough and did enough with it to make it the most accessible product on the market for the overwhelmed educator.
I have so many more questions, but I'll let you guys ask some more questions.
Some of the key things that stuck out to me was a lot of the emails and people that commented were teachers who are using it now or have used it in the past in other counties, and nobody had anything good to say to it. I went searching and looked and did some heavy research, and one of the things that came to mind was, what else can these Title II fiscal year 24 grants be used for? And you said that it's to do retention, training, and hiring. And I jotted this down because this was some statements on his website and other statements that people who have read these books, taken these courses. So I just wrote it down so I made sure I had everything here. So Mr. Toth is a self-described social justice warrior, empower, and educator who actively incorporates social justice principles into their teaching methods, aiming to empower students from marginalized backgrounds by providing them with the agency and knowledge to challenge the systemic inequalities and their full potential in the classroom, often through a curriculum that addresses diverse perspective and or experiences. How does that help our teachers in hiring, retention, and training?
It's training.
Training of social justice? This is what his whole curriculum revolves around. I mean, has a survey gone out to teachers to ask them where do they think that these Title II funds would be best spent? Because they're the teachers, they're the one teaching it. The teachers know how to teach. Why are we now telling the teachers, guess what, we're gonna learn how to teach a different way? We're reinventing the wheel again?
No, we're not. We're giving them a way to do something they're already doing even better and
It
with
sounds
more
like
efficacy for kids.
They're not happy with it.
For every 13 statements you find bashing it, you're going to find 14 statements that would like to learn more or at least get the professional development.
I have not heard one person that
informed
has
decision.
contacted us, spoke with, said anything good about it. Not one. Is there one person here?
We have administrators here that can say why they.
He's the administrator. I want somebody who has been using it. So that's really
They haven't
not
had the
helping
training
me.
yet.
You've just said it's in Kent Island as a pilot program.
The book study is. They're learning about it. They haven't had the training to implement it.
Who approved this in Kent Island as a pilot study? When was this approved? Was this approved by the board? Who approved this?
I don't know
Book
how
study, we
TSI.
don't bring book studies to the board for individual improvement.
Is the
Okay.
staff mandated to use it?
No, it was voluntary.
Well, this leads me back to the next thing that several people made us aware of. The board had no idea that the superintendent and her staff were going to Orlando for training. We were not aware, so we get a picture, and then, people send us emails letting us know, hey, this is what these Title II funds were used for.
I don't believe
For
this.
staff training.
Yeah, which is
and-
under your purview.
Right, and there's locations all over the nation.
But the
And I
board
think
was never even made aware that you and your team were going to Orlando.
It was professional development. We don't bring professional development.
You don't think it's appropriate to tell your board members that you're taking yourself and your team to Orlando, and then the board is left out in the open to, we were
send
telling people,
teachers
we
and
don't know
staff
what you're
mem-
talking about.
We send teachers and staff members consistently and constantly all through the year with all different kinds of funds for professional development. And we do not bring them to the board.
The only question I had on that, you guys went as administrators and yourself. Okay, you guys went for, better education. The people implementing this program are the teachers. Why weren't they the ones
Yeah,
going?
exactly.
And at the end of the day, I wasn't here yet. So I just look at it as, wouldn't that be a common courtesy, though, to send out that email to tell the board? I mean, that's
I'm just
just,
saying, we don't for any other, if that's a practice that the board would like.
The
it's a
board
common
doesn't know a
courtesy.
lot what goes on if
Yeah.
you're hearing that. That's usually what happens. We find out cut rate by the teachers, the public.
Professional
Yeah,
development
it's
for
okay.
school
Yeah,
districts is
before we
really
get
for the
down that
day-to-day
Wait,
operations.
hold on, before we go too far, let's remember what it says in our handbook and as board members. We have one employee, we hire her, she runs the district.
And I
There are
expect
things-
her to
There are
keep the
things that
board.
she has purview to do. She doesn't need our,
She needs to keep
Where's
the
the funding
board
come from?
aware. Where is her purview not to tell us what's going on? And then the board looks like a dumpster fire when we're asked by the public and we say, they didn't go to Orlando, what are you talking about? And then we get sent a picture and now we all look like we have no idea what's going on. A
is she
little-
gonna tell us every single thing that
Say
she
we have
does?
people that
I
went
mean,
to Boston and to Chicago and. all
seriously,
over the
it's a
nation.
question. Are you
They're elected
expecting?
members. We
I
were
get
elected to
that,
be-
but are
like,
you
to
expecting
represent the citizens.
the superintendent to inform you every single action that she takes?
In an
No,
email,
but I
think it's
would-
really-
That's what you just asked for.
I would be expected as a board member to have the courtesy for the superintendent to tell us, hey, we have these funds, we are gonna do this with it. Okay, that's all I'm asking for, is some courtesy.
especially 25 members going to Orlando.
All paid for.
I'm just, that's.
We
that's
didn't
not-
pay
that's
for
not-
it.
That's
You
not
didn't,
one
the
of the
grant paid for it.
Right.
Okay, so.
And that was
beyond
the best
let's-
use of
let's-
the
Let's
money?
move beyond the whole
Right.
Orlando situation.
Yes.
So,
Everybody, I'm sure, has more questions.
so I have some questions. So we're talking close to $70,000 for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a lot of money. Is this an annual thing?
No, it's not
So
annual.
it's a one-time thing. And then you talk about they can get a digital license. What happens when you usually get a license? You gotta pay
digital-
for it every year, right?
Typically, yes. This one will go from, when are we gonna do the PD? We'll go from June to June with a minimal renewal fees.
So you're still paying more money in the future.
If
So
there's Title
everything
II.
I've read on instructional empowerment, they say you get your initial cost. It is not even remotely close to that initial cost. Because every year, there's more cost, there's more implementation, they add this, they add that. Everywhere you look and you've read on this, like you said, everybody can have bad reviews and good reviews. So many say that this is not the overall cost, that it adds up. and it gets over $1 million by the time you try to implement every level that they have at all your different schools, it gets above and beyond the initial $60,000.
So they have 6 courses. That goes 201, 301, 401. We're looking to hold steady at the 101 with just improving our student-led teams.
Okay, so you're gonna pay the $70,000
For 3 schools.
for 3 schools. That $70,000 plus a minimal digital license fee, do we know what that minimal fee is?
I don't.
So that would be a number that we should get, because that's gonna then become on our annual cost that we gotta look at.
Well, it
I
would
would
be
also
Title
add,
II costs if the funding's there.
and I would say too, like in the first year, just for the full transparency, if it goes well at those 3 schools,
Right.
we could potentially use the Title II again after that to expand it to other schools too, right?
Yes.
So
If they're,
If it's well received.
that's the shared decision.
If
Right.
enough funding.
So I was at the budget roundtable earlier, December, when we went. One of the biggest items that everybody talked about was bringing back the help of the tutors and more teachers and such like that. So in these classrooms, I have the Maryland site brought up right now that says Title II funds can be used for teacher salaries to reduce class size.
Okay, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So why would we take $70,000, which could pay for another body in the schools, but we're
One
trying to
body.
implement a program that, to be 100% honest, isn't proven to help?
So we paid for 2 salaries when I first got here, with Title II, which made my job real easy, because I just had to sign off on 2 teachers for the first 2-3 years I managed it, and then those salaries were subsequently moved to local by finance and members of the executive team under a different administration. To bring those back on, we would have to apply for it, because at that point, it would be supplanting, because we'd be moving it back from local to grant. The thing about the Title II that we get is that we don't get a lot. So 70 is a lot of money for an effective teacher, which I think is part of the language. I don't know if that would get their salary and all of their medical. And Title II is so unsteady in what we get that while we might be able to pay for a salary or 2, we wouldn't be able to pay for any other professional development. We wouldn't be able to send teachers to national conferences to bring back learning for our contents, for CTE, for art. So it would deplete us of staying in touch with national trends and practices. So you're absolutely right.
Could funds have been used for the teachers to go to Florida? For the empowerment training, instructional empowerment? In other words,
So what
This is
Instead of sending the administrators?
yes, if this is ultimately where the place is going to land, I would like to just address the elephant in the room. I feel like teachers are so spread thin right now. I feel like it's almost insulting to even think about imposing one more thing that they have to do. It has nothing to do with laziness. I'm seeing it, like boots on the ground every day, what teachers are doing, and with a smile on their face for these kids, and then to ask them to learn something else to implement so that they can make their day even more harder or more difficult. And one, the training, the Ken Island's already got the book, and then they already have a summit planned in June, to which they're getting a stipend for $115 for training. Talk about putting the cart before the horse. This hasn't even been approved yet. So why are the teachers even wasting time learning something that's not required yet? They're not required to learn it, I've been told, but they're going to be graded on their annual review by using it. So like, I don't know, I would not want to do it.
I didn't see that in the, and again, the Ken Island is
Elaborate
different
on what
money.
summit you're talking about?
What?
What summit you're talking about?
There's a summit in June at Chesapeake College, correct? Isn't there something they have to attend in June?
There's a plan.
I find it, I don't know why, but the fact that Michael Toth has been a name in Caroline County and this county since 2016, and yet he keeps resurfacing through this one company and this company, I just find it very, it just seems messy and not very transparent. And I just have, again, if it's not a sole source provider, aside from the materials that are provided, and there's no known data that it works, and everyone, it's like if I bought a product on Amazon and every review is awful, I wouldn't buy it. So why are we even talking about the first crumb of $70,000 knowing full well that it's going to need more? It's only going to be good for the 3 schools that it's in, and it's just this reoccurring charge that you can't get out of. And so it's a waste of time and resources, knowing full well that there's no end in sight. And yet, like you said, we've been getting emails from people and not one has been positive. So like, to me as a consumer, I'm like, why would anybody want to buy this right now? Except for the administrators that went and had a great time at an all expensive paid trip that nobody knew about. And I just feel as if I was a teacher, I would be extremely frustrated. I would be extremely frustrated to know that this is another thing that we're going on when we're at a point where we need more teachers. That seems to be the big consensus, is we need more teachers. And we're already talking about cutting more teachers next year. And there's more funding issues. I understand that the Title II funds can only be used for something, but I think it's a very appropriate idea to ask how and where they can be utilized by actually not insulting the teachers, but asking them, like, collaborate with them instead of just looking at it as telling them what they need, actually asking them what they need. That's just my opinion. I think that it's not what the county needs right now at all.
I have a question. What is this man's background? Because if you go look on his LinkedIn, you look on his website, you look everywhere, he has 0 details on his background.
I don't know what school he went to.
It has nothing.
I don't know if he was ever an educator.
So it's leadership, instructional things. That's all stuff you can learn on a Google search. I learned leadership and teamwork through sports, military, my Marine Corps background. I can have 0 background in education or anything and go put together a program and start a company. I'm not saying he did that, but it just seems weird that you can't find where he went to college, what university research laboratory he supposedly worked at and pulled all this information from and did all this stuff with his team. You can't find that anywhere. Whether, I know you've worked with him and you've traveled with him and spoke with him and presented this instruction with him out in San Diego.
That's absolutely
Right.
correct.
So
And I believe in
why-
it, and I will tell you that I believe in that.
that's fine.
And I think that.
But I'm saying, why does
and
somebody
Bridget's opinion
hide
that
their
she believes in it as
background?
well.
Caroline County dropped it as soon as you were no longer the superintendent. I feel like that speaks volumes of
I don't think that's accurate, but
that's
fair
what,
enough.
I mean, I have news articles that said that it went when the end of your,
I'd love to see that, but I don't think it's appropriate.
No, I'm
right
just
now.
curious, like, so what is this guy? Because anybody can go create these things.
I mean, I think at this point, it's obvious that the board doesn't support this, so I don't know that we can continue to bash
majority
it.
of the board
I think you ask if they're not going to entertain a vote, then,
Does anybody have a motion? Does anybody?
I'm not even gonna bother.
right, so I mean.
Okay.
We could sit here probably for 3 hours and discuss this, but I
Back
think
and
that
forth.
we do have an agenda, and I think we should.
And the
move
board be presented with other options where this can be used?
Correct.
And maybe
The Title II funds or the-
give the teachers a survey and hear what they think. Because they're the ones on the ground. They're the ones with the
These
kids.
are 24 funds. I don't know that the timing is going to be appropriate for us.
Oh, here we go again.
This
This is another,
But we can.
this
we can
happens all
certainly
the time.
We can certainly do the
But
best
she
we
said that
can.
when she sat down, these are funds
This
from
has
23,
happened at every single
24.
meeting with grant funds where you present it and then we're like, well, can we see other ideas? And they're like, oh, well, it has to be used within the next month, just like the tutor money.
Yeah, that's true.
So why
These
isn't
are
it
23,
presented to the board before so we can discuss
Because
it?
these are funds that are left over after all the initiatives that were approved and the C-125 was already done and comes down and you do everything and then you have funds that are left over. Because, as Bridget stated in the very beginning, this is because we didn't need as many coaches as we had originally planned. So then therefore, we had money left over. And so then you have to create a plan of how to use that money. And that has to be done in a very short time frame because you're still on the same timeline. So you only have so long to spend it. So if you've made a plan and then you utilize the plan and then you have money left over, now you're at the end of your timeline. So then you have
That would be great if we were to see a plan on anything, budget, how you guys do the title of stuff, like a plan of
You want a
moving
copy of every single
forward.
title grant?
No, I want to know how we're gonna
Excuse
move
me.
forward
That's,
Not to be rude, but maybe a closed
that's not
session might be a
appropriate.
better time to be doing this because there are
I'm
parents
sorry.
that should be
I'm sorry.
here
This
waiting
is
for it
a
to go.
board
I know.
conversation.
Already had
And you
public
are,
comment.
right.
Well,
and-
I can
but
get you copies of
you
every
are-
single title
yeah,
grant.
we're
I don't
going
need
to move
copies, I
on.
just want to.
They have
take a break.
We are going to move on to the next session. Thank you, Ms. Passer.
Thank you. Mr. Barraclough. Student classroom desk purchase.
Good evening, President Bent, Vice President Capes, board members, executive team, Dr. Salins. My name is Darryl Barraclough. I'm the supervisor of facilities and design. I come before you this evening with actually two purchase requests. The first one is for student classroom desk furniture purchase for Bayside Elementary School. We are looking to purchase 400 student desks to replace the existing desks, which are approximately 20 years plus old. I reached out to our local Verco Classroom Furniture. Verco is a classroom manufacturer which we have in the school system currently. They have a very good track record, have been in business for a very, very long time. Our local dealer, who we typically purchase through a intergovernmental purchasing agreement, is Duron. Reached out to them, received pricing from them. In addition to receiving pricing from them, I reached out to the Verco manufacturer and received names and telephone numbers for two national resellers and obtained pricing or sought pricing from them, received pricing from one, and a second one or a third vendor declined to provide pricing. So with that said, Duron was the lowest of three quotes at $64,612. So that's why I'm requesting approval to author a purchase order with them. Questions?
Quick question. Who's doing all the furniture for the new BOE building?
That has not been decided yet.
So if we were able to work with one of these companies and we're purchasing all that, do they do some kind of discounts if you're?
This is all through an intergovernment purchasing agreement, and they will not offer pricing. I did have questions with them on other items that were similar, because this purchase, and not speaking of the central office furniture, but this purchase involves several other schools, like the next one that I'm going to present. We have other pricing that fell below the threshold for board approval that we're authoring purchase orders on as well. And they're all not going to the same vendor because the pricing just worked out that way. But when questions came up about pricing, they won't budge on their pricing, because what happens is that counties talk, and if I tell our next door county or a county on the other side of the water that I was able to buy a desk for $600 and it's normally $700, they're all going to be going to him and saying, well, why'd you sell it to him for $600, not $700? So it's all based on a cooperative purchasing agreement pricing with Duron.
Any other questions? Someone provide a motion? You can read the recommended action.
Can I make a motion to purchase the 400 student classroom desks to replace the existing desks? The budget source is local FY25 CIP funds.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Next up is student desk purchases for Queen Anne's County High School. We're looking at 470 student desks, 640 student chairs to replace the desks and chairs which date back to the 2002 renovation and addition project. Again, similar to the previous one that I presented, I reached out to the Verco Classroom furniture dealer who sells to Queen Anne's County Public School and received the price of $211,760.80. The two other vendors who sell nationally, one declined to provide a price, and the second one provided a price of $231,816.96. And one thing that I do think it's very prudent to point out is the fact that the national resellers price are basically a drop ship price. So they're going to basically pull up at our school with a tractor trailer, and we're going to have to get custodians or maintenance or whomever to unload all of the furniture, and then those same folks would be responsible for unboxing it, doing any assembly that might be required, moving the furniture into the classrooms, getting rid of all of the refuge and packaging material and all of that. And all of that is included in Duron's price. So I'm seeking approval for a purchase order for Duron.
Just what might help for the people at home, and including for myself, because I'm new to all this. The funds for this can only be used for items such as this, correct? It's like,
They're capital funds, so they can only be used for capital-type purchases, which furniture falls into that. I'm not, I guess I'm not sure where your question is going, but we couldn't take these funds and say, let's employ teachers with this fund.
I think just people at home, when they're hearing this, are going to have questions on, could these funds be better spent somewhere else because of the things are, and I just wanted to give you a chance to say to the layperson that this cannot go towards a teacher, this cannot go towards tutoring, just for educational purposes.
That's correct.
Not to challenge it.
It would have to go towards a capital purchase, which would be.
And what do you do with the existing furniture? Is there a way to auction it, to maybe recoup some of the funds, to maybe offset the expense?
Yes, we have a public surplus. When we did the first phase at Queen Anne's County High School, we put it on there. Some things get bid on and sent to maybe a third world country or something like that. We put all of our buses on there. And then that money goes back into the board account. Some items that nobody's interested in, we end up taking to the junkyard for metal. And then again, that money comes back into.
And that money gets recorded and accounted in part of?
Back into it. Now, you don't get the price of what and it all depends on what the items are. Sometimes when we have a copier, if it's a certain brand, we'll get, $1,000. If it's another kind of brand, there's not a whole lot of people that work on it, you might get $10. But like I said, we try to put it on public surplus, and then that way, that gives everybody a chance to bid on it, and you don't get this, well, Johnny wanted to buy this, and he got to buy it, nobody else got a chance. Everybody goes on there, it's a public, and it's only for government equipment, so any kind of government can join and put their equipment on there or surplus furniture on there. And I think one point to note, Mr. Barraclough said when it was renovated, a lot of this furniture is actually from when the school was originally built back in 1966. So a lot of the furniture there has seen its useful life.
So we approved, well, I didn't approve, I wasn't on the board, but on September 17th of 2022, there was a $396,000 contract approved for Duron for chairs and tables and desks. What?
I wasn't here then. I could only speak to what I'm thinking it might be, but it might have been, I do know that Queen Anne's County High School developed a furniture purchase, and they broke it down into 3 phases, and that may have been the first phase, and Mr. Pender can correct me if I'm.
I believe it was 24 classrooms.
Yeah, we were able to use ESSER funds for that at the time. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I did have a question on the, let me see if it'll pull back up here. Oops. So there is a signature in the CFO line. We don't have a CFO. Is that, whose signature is that?
I was going to say,
It
how does that?
It's Dr. Kepler's.
Okay.
It's yours. Dr. Kipler, it's yours. I'm assuming that it's yours.
It's his.
Yeah. Any other questions? Can I get a motion for approval?
Can I make a motion for the Queen Anne's County Board of Education to approve the purchase of 470 student classroom desks and 650 student chairs through the Duron Furniture Solutions for Queen Anne's County High School, fiscal impact $211,760.80, and the budget source is local FY25 CIP funds.
I second that.
Excuse me. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The next item is the review and revisions of the board handbook. Has everybody had a chance to look at it? There were a couple questions and line items from members of the previous board. Did we review
So-
those, and are we good with the
Well,
updates?
I went through the board handbook, that this Edding version, which is what we have now, is the current version, and they don't match. There was some changes that we never actually agreed upon them as a
Okay.
board. So I wrote down a couple comments, like where they don't match the actual board we have now, or board handbook we have now.
Okay.
And I know one of the ones that we had talked about before, which had got changed, was providing all the board members with the Maryland Law Desk Book. And I know the superintendent's comment was it just have one copy in her office, but I was provided one when I started.
You mean this one?
Yes.
There should be
No,
one on
that's
every
annotate.
desk.
What was
They're
that?
very costly. That's
I was
why
gonna say, there
suggest
should be
every
one in
day
every desk.
There isn't.
This one has a name on
So
it.
the original one said that every board member will be provided with one, and then it was changed to, there would just be one in the superintendent's office. I think it's helpful. I've looked up a lot of stuff in it, and I don't think a board member should have to drive to Centerville to look in the Maryland Law Desk Book. I mean, Rochelle had said to us there was a electronic copy that we could get, so
Can we do
I
that?
don't know. She said you had to have a master book. That, she said the master books.
electronic?
Yeah, it came with a CD, so, but
Oh, it
none of
does.
us, that was in no books we had, like, nobody had at the time. I don't know how we can get that, but,
Well, it's, you just
Like
order it.
access
Okay.
to,
Yeah.
or I don't have to come here. So if there's like
order
a
it.
digital way.
You should be able to take the copy that's in your desk if there's.
I don't
one
have
in there.
I don't have one at my desk, at least unless it's a tiny micro
You have to check
version.
the
no,
year.
it's like that big.
I feel like it would be kind of big.
Check the year, because it's new every year.
Is it?
They're $200 a piece.
More than that.
That's $200.
Yeah, this is
More than that,
21.
aren't they?
What's that one?
I think it was $100, to tell you the truth, when
I have
No, to
the
be
Perry
invoice.
ordered
I
it
don't
for
think
me.
I
Put up. I have the invoice put up, I don't want to buy.
Goodness.
2021.
Okay. So these are old ones?
Even digital access is fine. I'm sure that's at a significant cost reduction
Probably
than a book.
cheaper.
Yeah, I'm fine with having just access in general,
Go through this next time.
but I would like to have access
Things in there.
Okay.
without having to go to
Yeah.
the super's office.
May have-
Can we
may
look
have
at
some
options
info
for
about
how
it.
we get digital copies, please? Thank you. All right, so, that's the legal book, but that doesn't address the handbook and the questions.
And I
We
did
could
just-
probably bring that up during our working session and maybe walk through it together.
I just noticed too, it's like the old
Yeah,
front, so.
so can we add that to maybe next week?
The
Our
handbook.
next meeting? Yeah, so that we can walk through it
Okay.
and talk through the items, especially the comments on the side, to make sure that we agree or disagree and make those changes together as a group. Okay.
Before you go off.
Does anybody feel we need a break, or you want to keep going?
I'm good.
All right. Next up, 8:01, information session. Mr. John Grow, the climate survey results.
Good evening. Just give me a second to pull up this presentation.
Oh, you just pulled out.
Did I pull it out of
Yeah.
there? There we go. All right. Good evening, President Bent, Dr. Salins, executive team, members of the board.
Happy with everything.
You're okay. For the record, I'm John Grow. I'm the Supervisor of Accountability. Tonight, I'm here to review two different surveys with you. The first one being the Queen Anne's Climate Survey that we send out each year. And then the second one will be the MD report card from the state that our students and our teachers take also. So I'll go over those results with you, and then in between, we'll take questions and I'll kind of explain where they go, okay? So the first one, the climate survey, the purpose of this is to gather a pulse on the culture and climate throughout the district, ask employees about their work and leadership, and then about the communication throughout the district.
And this is not a state requirement.
This is not, this
simply-
is done just by us. This has been given the last, has it been 3 or 4? Is it like? I
This
believe
is the
This is the
third
third year in a row, and it has not changed. It's been the same throughout, so we're able to look at the data across all the schools. Methodology through this, it's administered within 2 weeks. It's open for 2 weeks in November. 2 surveys are given, one to the central office and one to the school-based. Responses are anonymous. Employees respond to their bargaining unit and the level in which they worked, length of service that they work. This year, we had roughly a 65% response, which is about 10% up from the 23-24 school year. Questions are on a 5-point Likert scale, so it's the same thing. Like, you'll see a statement and you'll answer strongly, disagree, all the way through strongly agree, with a neutral one in the middle. And then they're categorized into 4 different topics, which is climate and culture, feelings and perception of employees' own work, leadership, and communication. This is just a quick overview of just the respondent profile. So we use Qualtrics, and you can really break down a lot of data with this. We had 591, and you can kind of just break it down into how many elementary, middle, high, and so forth. Just so in case you want to see the whole, or if you want to go back and look in between each of those. In the first topic, which is climate and culture questions, these are the type of questions that they'll answer about positive climate in the school, culture, respect among staff and students, belonging and support, things along that nature. This right here, remember, it's on that 5-point Likert scale, so you want to definitely see it above that 3 in the middle into the agrees. So we're at a 4.08 overall average on that one, and then it breaks it down throughout each of those different levels and throughout each topic. The second one is employees' own work questions. So this goes through and talks about the mission and vision and goals of the district, responsibilities, expectations, getting feedback on teacher performance, having resources, and throughout their own classrooms. This one came out to a 4.09 across all of them for the average. When it goes into leadership, everyone is asked about school administrator support, clear expectations, district supervisors, and then also executive leadership support as well, along with those expectations. This one was a 3.69, 3.7, and again, breaks that down. Communication questions, these are, this is about open communication and then 2-way communication between the school and then the district level. And this one came out also to a 3.65. Next up, once we have all of these averages and all these breakdowns of this data, this helps us inform of our work within our strategic plan, superintendent roundtables, our school improvement committees. So in each school, they have their school improvement teams. They can break this data down, and we can really see where we were, where we're going, and so forth. So we do that within the county just so that we can get that, because the one that the state sends out is more like a whole state that we get back. And we want to know just right here in Queen Anne with our own types of questions. Any questions on that one?
Oh, keep going.
Okay, I'll roll. The second one, this one comes from the state. This is the Maryland School Survey. What is the school survey? This is in our accountability system. So this kind of data gets rolled into our report card, so within each school and then the entire district. So this gets into some of those percentages that gives us those ratings in our report cards. This is just another state definition of climate, which really goes into everything about school success. And then who takes this survey? So this is only given to students grades 5 through 11. They take this survey, and then all instructional staff take this survey as well. Grades 5 through 8, they get 53 questions. High school, 9 through 11, they get 54, and then instructors, they get 72 questions. This is sort of the same way that we do ours. There's 4 different domains. It's safety, environment, engagement, and relationships. And they, again, go through strongly agree, and so forth. This one is more on a, go to this next one, up to like a 0 to a 10. So a lot of that is in those, up greater than 9 will be more favorable and so forth in those 4 different ways. So for example, and I have these from the last 3 years as well, the safety domain. So safety goes into physical safety, emotional safety, and you can see those scores right there. When they answer these questions, they all fit into that. So physical safety being how students feel safe at school. And it's not just themselves, but how they feel everyone in the school, the safety of that. And that went from, you can see like a 4 to 3 to a 5. So when I go through each one of those, you can kind of look at those scores on the side. And then emotional safety for the students, again, was around that 5.8, 5.3. And that's just how they feel, whether they're accepted and they feel part of their school. And then on the instructional side, you'll see the same thing. A lot of times on the instructional side, you'll see, whether they think that, those resources are there for those students, especially within their emotional safety. Do they have, are the students listened to, are they accepted, and so forth. And you can see those, what those scores are right there. It's really interesting to, when you're in a school to really look at where the students are, where the staff are, and that's, again, really helpful when you're sitting down with your teams. There's more in the safety domain. They go into bullying and substance abuse. So where bullying, where they feel, our students teased and bullied and cyberbullied in school. And that was from a 5.3 to a 4. And then substance abuse, where they feel students thinks it's okay to use alcohol, drugs, or tobacco at school. And that you can see was a 6 to a 7. Bullying on the instructional side and substance abuse, again, that's, do we feel that we have these resources put into effect for our students? And you can see where those scores are as well. There's a community domain, and this goes into respect for diversity and participation and engagement. So whether students feel that they're being treated fairly, whether they're respected, also their participation being, do they have enough chances to participate in their classes, extracurriculars, and so forth. And again, those scores are right there on the side for students and for instructional staff. In the environmental domain, there's behavior and academic supports, and then physical environment. Behavior and academic being the degree in which students feel that they receive all of that support, emotional, social, in the school, and then instructional, whether we have those resources for those students. And both of those increased a bit over this past year. And then physical environment, whether they feel that their school is kept clean, comfortable, and in good repair. That went up from a 2.7 to a 3.2, and then teachers, same thing, from a 5.9 to a 6.4. In relationships, it asks questions about student-to-student relationships, and then also student-to-staff relationships. So you can see those scores there, how students rate themselves on that, and then how the instructional staff also sees student-to-student and then student-to-staff. And that student to staff, going up, in the 7s, but still increased there, and then also on the instructional side. The last one is quality of instruction. Of course, students won't get this one, but the instructional staff gets this, and this is based on adequate feedback from their school leadership to improve their teaching, and that's gone up each year from a 5, 6 to a 7. So again, those come in and gets calculated into a percent that fits in, again, more categories into the Maryland report card. And that can be found on mdreportcard.org, and you can see all of those. There's tons of categories if you'd like to go on there and check that out. But this is the part that came through with the Maryland School Survey. This will be taken again, probably the end of February, beginning of March, we'll take this again. And that's all I have right there. Any questions at all?
I guess, so what is done about the areas that scored low? Like bullying, emotional safety, participation, and engagement? Do we just take that into consideration?
I mean, I think we just take this as another data point along with some of our others that we take to our teams. And when we look at some of the programs or what we're doing through our guidance department or some of the other products that we use with, or programs that we use, you know, what parts may be working, what parts should we really stress on a little bit more? And it could vary school to school, or it could, you know.
Do we look at that? Do you have that broken down to see, you know, I guess I just wonder, like.
Into the school, it does get broken down to schools and
Okay,
shared.
so
Yes,
it's just not
yes,
on
they
this.
have their own for sure, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and if you, on that site, you can go by the district and you can go into each school and see everyone separately.
They do use that to help plan for their school improvement planning for the next year.
It's a lot of their
What
data
additional
points in there,
training or
it is.
Programming that needs to take place. So they get a complete, the same exact look, but it's just for your school. So the principals use that information.
And all the students take it? I know the teachers, I was just wondering why they only have a 65%. I guess because you.
Oh, no, all the students take this.
All the students take this one,
Our survey
yes.
was 65%, which is actually statistically very significant for a survey.
I know.
Oh, for
Is that-
teachers,
and it
65%
was up.
teachers?
I mean, that's very significant for. that
And did you say,
means
how was this implemented via like computer or paper, or how did they?
It's called.
It was
text, which is
electronic, it was
computer.
sent, yes.
Yeah, they get an email basically and a link, and they go to that link and answer the questions. And, you know, not every district does surveys. It is leaving yourself exposed and vulnerable, and, you know, but we want to know how we can make things better, and it does reflect the culture and the climate of the school district. And I think a lot of it does actually align with the state data,
It
which
does,
is
and we're
great,
able
another
to,
data
we're able
point
to
for
expand a
us.
few of those questions into a couple other areas.
Yeah. It's great to have more than one data point, you know.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Kibler.
I'm going to go down there because I have to flip through the slides.
Sure.
Let me help you with that.
Thanks. Good evening, board members, President Bent, Dr. Salins, executive team, Dr. Matthew Kibler, Assistant Superintendent. I think I have a couple of agenda items here. The first one being our student enrollment report for the 2024-2025 school year. So this is basically a snapshot of literally the student enrollment in each of our schools and the district as a whole. This is kind of a standard enrollment report that's been shared with the board for years, kind of tweaked it a little bit here and there with questions. I'm happy to take questions that you have and bring things back any way you want to see it. I might go through some of the slides quickly because it's the same information from one to the next, just looking at it in a little bit different way. Happy to, please stop me at any point if there's something we want to talk and look at. But really the purpose is to provide an overview of student enrollment data as reported to MSDE, the Maryland State Department of Education, based on 9/30/2024. And for our new board members, why is 9/30/2024 important? Because that sets our stage for our school funding for the next fiscal year. So you'll hear what's your September 30th account, what's your enrollment count. It's always going back to that September 30th. That's the, how many students do we have in the seats at that time? And that sets our funding. So that's why we're looking, and it will start to give us a little bit of an idea of where we might be the next year. One thing we added this year, because I know with some of our staffing changes, there's been a lot of discussion about class sizes, and so we included a slide on that in here too, to kind of just jumpstart that conversation as we move into the remainder of the year and budget planning and things. So first off, this is just our overall fall enrollment. So you can see we have about 7,500 students. The light green portion are our pre-K students. The reason that the pre-K is called out separately is just because the way the funding is different for those students. Even though we count pre-K on September 30th, they're only in the funding like one bucket, where the rest of the student body is applied everywhere. And so you really, I don't want to say it's more important, it's just, I guess, a different status for our K-12 students. So you can notice that for 24-25, we're largely flat from last year, so 7,155 students. I know that we talk a lot about pre-K. We're going to talk about pre-K in the blueprint as well. And you might say, well, hey, I've heard about all this pre-K expansion. The community might be wondering, why are our numbers not really changing? These pre-K numbers capture all the pre-K students, whether that's half-day or full-day. One thing we've done in our pre-K expansion in the past 3 years, taking the half-day programs to full-day, we're not necessarily increasing the total number of pre-K students we have. We're just changing those seats from half-day seats to full-day seats. So that's why you don't see a whole lot of difference in those.
And this is mostly four-year-olds?
Mostly 4-year-olds. There are some 3-year-olds in the number for our blended learning for students with disabilities. And I don't want to give away everything in the blueprint that's coming up later, because that's good news, but we do have a 3-year-old full-day class pilot at Mattapique Elementary. And then we just kind of broke it out just so you could see the state aid. When you hear folks talk about what were your state aid numbers, how did your state aid numbers change? That's that K-12 number, and that's what we have here. And then you see we did break it out, the preschool and the pre-K. Our designation, pre-kindergarten in our system, that's the 4-year-old program, preschool is the 3-year-old, and that's gonna be mostly our blended learning students with disabilities. Broken down by school and by grade. If it's okay with the board, the next few slides I'll probably go through just quickly. We can hit any one you want. It's just, this is exactly what I was talking about, different ways to look at the sort of the same information. You can look at how the enrollment at each individual school is changing over the past 5 years. And then we have that broken down in a bar chart as well. Same data, just a different way to look at it. You can notice that most of our elementary schools, that is where we're seeing a majority of the student enrollment increase. When you go to middle school, you'll see a little bit overall general decline. If you look at some of the Maryland Department of Planning, we're actually expected to have the biggest middle school growth proportionally to the end of the 2020s. Why is that? It's because right now our middle school enrollment has dropped a little bit with the birth rate, but because the elementary has ticked up a little bit, eventually those kids are going to go to middle school. So it's not because if you look at any of that Department of Planning stuff that we're expecting all kinds of new people to move to the county, it's just our students getting older. High school relatively flat, a little bit of a down year this year at Queen Anne's County, just one class. Look at the ethnicity makeup of our student body. Hispanic is the growing population. We also have provided historically home instruction data during this enrollment report. I was not here when that was originally put in here, but just to kind of continue the legacy of having it here, you can see our home instruction data. Obviously, the blue bar, the 2020, 2021, that represents the COVID year, the big COVID year. You see the drop after that. There's 2 ways for home instruction families to deliver instruction and be monitored. We can monitor them. They can elect for us to monitor them, or they can be monitored by an umbrella organization that's registered with MSD, and that's just the breakdown. And that's the grade level distribution. I would add, I maybe should have said at the beginning, there was a big drop during the COVID year. Obviously, it ties to the home instruction as well, and we've talked about it before with the board and with our county commissioners, why, the COVID happened and it looks like we had all these students leave the school system. Why have they not come back? What we noticed is that, yes, there were the uptick in home instruction, but if you look at the birth rate in Queen Anne's County as well, in like the I think it started in 2012 through about like 2017, 18. Really, the timing of when we had down years, basically, and that is timed with COVID. So it was kind of a perfect storm where we did lose some students, admittedly, to private schools, home instruction, but it was also timed with lower birth rate in Queen Anne's County. Both of those situations kind of explained half of that 300 student drop back in 2020.
And for the people at home, that translates to funding per.
Correct.
Okay. And to give an idea how much that is when you look at the drop.
So it's hard to do because the foundation amount for every student brings in is around $8,000 to $10,000. I forget the actual number this year, but a rough estimate, if you take the average per student, is around $15,000. So if you do 300 times 15.
I can't do the math fast enough. 5 million-ish, something
Yes,
like
4.5.
that.
4.5 million.
He does numbers well. So what
Plug
that
in
says
computers and
too,
do fast math.
so what that says too is we've got a number of new communities in our county. I'm in one. So we picked up, 20, 30 new elementary school students in Churchill. But they happened after the September 30th date. So we don't get money for those because they weren't in the original count. The good news is the legislative committee, we talked about that a lot. And that's one of our agendas, to push for periods where we check and get updated numbers. Because you shouldn't be penalized that your county got a whole new set of students, but because they were after September 30th, you no longer get the money to pay for them.
Question,
Yes?
so when the September 30th happens and there's times during the year that there is a fluctuation or an increase in students, and how does that affect the timeline for funding? Like, in other words, is it just once a year you have a chance to put in your numbers and that's it?
Yep.
And there's no times during the year to reassess?
Not at all.
And are there known times of fluctuations each year that we can anticipate? Like, are there historically have been it? Like,
There have been some.
Yeah, definitely, as we're moving into second semester, we typically in January will get an influx. But also I have to say that they likely won't do anything with it, because if we have a student who's in Dorchester County on September 30th and not in Queen Anne's County, they got paid for that student. That student came and now we don't get paid for it. They're not going to pay for that student again in the midst of another snapshot during the middle of the year. Now, maybe what they do is say, hey, Dorchester County's got to transfer money.
yeah, can they redirect the funds?
Redirect. I
That
think
would be
that
nice.
becomes very complicated, but I'm just saying, like, most of those kids are sitting somewhere in the state of Maryland and are moving. So the state of Maryland has paid for them. They just paid for them in a different school district. Now, I mean, we do have some Delaware that come over, but yeah, we
Military
do.
families.
Yeah.
But we also have
But,
a lot of,
but we have a lot from, like, Kent County. Recently, we've had a lot of
Yeah.
students come and enroll at Churchill Elementary School from Kent County, and, you know, they weren't with us on September 30th last year. They came after. We didn't get paid for them, so.
It's really interesting, like, if we start hearing in the middle of September that we might have families moving to the area, guidance departments will work with those families, like, hey, get your student enrolled, like, as
Get
soon as
enrolled, please,
possible.
please.
It really makes a
Is
difference for us.
possibly changing the legislature to support that? Is that something that is possible?
why not?
I mean,
We
I
just
feel
gotta
like
beat on our legislators.
it's like,
Why not?
I don't see why not. So
Exactly.
I feel like if we can, we should.
We should. We're trying. We talked about it a lot.
Good point.
There's a lot that goes into that.
But you got to start somewhere. Like, I mean,
That's
it's,
a convoluted process. We're trying to transfer.
if
the
it's
money back.
consistently showing us at a loss, I feel like it's worth exploring.
But we might not be the only school district either, so we're probably not the only, it's probably happening all across the state or the US.
Not necessarily, like Frederick County is the largest growing county, and Wycomico County is probably the second largest growing district. And so their funding source, you know, they're seeing greater increases to their foundational monies because of that.
Or even changing it where that, I don't say funding can change because I know that I'm not an accountant and how that works into numbers, but having some sort of halfway through the year, being able to resubmit the change, and then I don't know how, but I'm just saying, I feel like it's worth a conversation of how, I don't know.
That'd be
I would
great.
like to
That'd be a legislative committee, sorry.
Yeah. But I would like to say that, we're a big farming county, and we have an influx of students during harvesting season. So around that time, help us out. Sorry.
Great conversation. Thank you. The next slide is a trend in our class size. We have 2 slides here. I wanted to show it in 2 different ways. Class size by grade band. I try to be, so I am a statistician, try to be fully transparent. One of the reasons elementary is only captured K to 5, because in full transparency, pre-K, we get our classrooms capped at 20 students. So I could skew the data here at the elementary level, but didn't think that's fair. So that's why we're looking K to 5. You can see the change in the last 3 school years at the elementary level, the middle, and the high school level. Kind of have 2 things going into what is happening here, and why is it a bigger jump at elementary. It's not that we've only lost staff at the elementary level. If you look back at the previous slides, that's also where we've gotten more students too. So it's kind of timed well there. There's been staffing changes at every level, but that's why that one jumps out specifically. And I have that as well if you want to look actually at the grade level on the next slide. High school doesn't really lend itself to look by grade, so I divided that one out by subject area.
Break down by the school too.
I could.
That's how we do our enrollment across the district, is we look at it by every single school.
Right.
When we're making staffing decisions, that's how we make staffing decisions, is we have a complete spreadsheet of every single size.
And I'll tell you that the looking at it by school, it gets really challenging when you do that, because you will see a school that has maybe 26 kids in a class, but if it's one of the smaller elementary schools, as soon as you add another classroom teacher there, then all of a sudden they go down to like 14 or 16, whatever. We have it, happy to share it.
Because that's a question, because we all know how congested the western side of the county is compared to the eastern side. So when you look at the classrooms, we always hear about Kent Island or that side of the county having larger classrooms, and we hear the teachers speak about that. But then you go to the other side of the county, that might be smaller. So sometimes we think about that being kind of skewing the numbers, not saying that that's done purposely, but we would like to see what schools we may be able to change or fix or help bring those numbers back. Right now, that's pretty reasonable, but as we're saying, that can change the numbers. Because the county's almost completely different on each side.
And that's literally what we do every single year. We look at the enrollment at every single school, and we will transfer a position to another school to reduce their class size. And it gets tricky because kindergarten, you have to do it really late. So then you have some teachers that, they're kind of getting set up for their room, and they may end up having to move them at the last minute. But, and also a point well taken that we do have some schools that have they're small schools. So taking away one teacher could increase class sizes dramatically, or reduce, if you add one, reduce them, to skew the data or to throw the data off. So, but we take a lot of time and effort into staffing and enrollment numbers to try to make it equitable across the district. Yeah.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next topic.
All right. Next calendar.
Yes.
Thank you. I did put everything in order. So tonight to talk about school calendar, what I wanted to basically ask is just permission to continue how we've developed the school calendar in the past and move forward with that. So have a policy that says that we would create 3 school calendars to present to employees, community members and such, and then present to you all. So what we've used is our Citizens Advisory Council and our School System Improvement Committee to develop those 3 calendars. What has been, since our administration, we developed those 3 calendars. We would then present them in a survey to the community. That would be our families and our staff. And then we would bring the results of those surveys with the calendars to you all for a vote, and you could go with what the community says. You can obviously make any edits and things like that as well, but it has been that's been the process, and basically I'm seeking permission, approval, or direction if that's not the process that you want to follow. I do have the 3 drafts of the calendars. I have them here in a copy that I can share. I would ask that I collect them back, and the reason for that, it's just so we don't get confusion in the community.
Right.
When I put the versions out in a survey, those will be out. They have draft written on it, but we all know how that happens. It still says 25, 26 on the top, and that's the only reason I haven't posted them yet, just till I got your all's direction. But with your permission, what I would do is I'd create a survey. I would include the 3 calendars, a couple sentences about what distinguishes them from each other, and then bring that back for you. We were delayed with snow. Last year, we were able to present it to you in February. Hopefully I could get that out, but if we felt like we didn't get enough responses, we might have to delay it till the beginning of March, but happy to have your direction.
I think the survey has worked good thus far. Nobody can really complain that, you didn't listen to them, because everybody's getting a chance to
vote.
say
Yep.
and pick what they want.
And I'll talk more about it when we bring the survey back, but the committees work hard. We try to provide an option with a before Labor Day start and after Labor Day start, take into account spring break, no spring break, all of those things, so. Thank you.
Just a comment. There was a comment from Talbot County. Did I tell you about that?
I don't know.
The comment was, we have a lot of people that live there, work here. And there was a question on whether we could work together as 2 counties to put a more cohesive calendar together that benefits both. I told them how we do it. We did generate the 3 calendars, we put it out. And, if they work here, they're commenting on it anyway. But they wanted to see if there was a way to sync the 2 a little bit more, just so you live over there, but you work here, and you want to make sure that they sort of mash up.
So
If they've reached out, that's great. If they haven't, because I asked them to.
if you all direct me to do that, I can. I can say, I'm trying to make the 70.
I think you're
No, no,
opening
I'm
yourself
not-
up
no, no.
to,
I'm
I
not
mean, we have a lot of
saying
people that
we
work in
reach out
Anne
to
Arundel
them.
and everywhere else, so
Right.
I think we just.
It was just a comment, so I just wanted to make sure it was out there.
Thank you.
Say that we put it out there. We'll keep going.
And I'll thank publicly the members of those 2 committees right now. I'll thank them again when we do the vote. I know it's hard work, it's a burden. A lot of people, I think they get excited about it. I think they can but it's really regulated too. Like, there's only so much we can do with it. It's kind of interesting. Thank you.
Okay. Blueprint, AIB update.
Okay, so yeah, we have 2 blueprint agenda items. The first one, so we talked about doing like a blueprint sort of 101 for new board members and for the public as well, just a refresher. We do talk about a lot, and we kind of always hit the pillars again. What I wanted to start with, because I think, Mr. Dreyer, you asked to see what the implementation plan was that was submitted. So the first topic right now, this is the full implementation plan that was approved by the AIB at their November 21st meeting, I believe it was, and all of the different pieces to this. We submitted the initial draft to the board back in May when it was submitted, and now here's the final approval. I don't want it to appear like I did this by myself. This is a huge undertaking across the district. I appreciate everybody that helps. You can see how much they changed it. If you look at the memo from the Accountability and Implementation Board last year when we had to do a implementation plan, it was just the plan, just the document, which was already a bear to complete. But this year they lumped all of these other pieces of blueprint implementation into full approval. And I am happy to report that that we were approved. Not everybody was approved right away. And I think there's still a county or 2 that's waiting on approval.
Baltimore, and there's one other that still haven't finished theirs.
To make, I don't know if it's easy or not, but I condensed everything into one solid PDF that's associated with the memo. So I hope that's helpful, and I can answer any questions about it now or later that you might have.
So Ms. Heiss said that they hold up funding until these plans are approved. How much funding are we talking about?
So they haven't done that yet to anybody. Baltimore County, or did you say it was city? I'm sorry, I forget now.
It's one of the two.
Yeah.
I always get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the law changes initially in the first year where they could withhold funding, and please don't quote me, I can get you the exact, but they were able to withhold 25% of new funding over previous fiscal years. Eventually that changes where if the state decides that you are not in compliance with the blueprint, they can withhold 25% of all funds. I'm not sure the fiscal year that switch happens, and it's just a withhold. It doesn't mean you wouldn't get it back, but it's withheld until you're in compliance with the blueprint. So we don't want to be in that place, and I thank everybody for their help getting us here. You'll see, like with the career ladder, maintenance of certification, that goes back to negotiations as well. So I don't know, those folks with our teachers union appreciate their work to get us, I mean, they play a part as well.
Where are we at with the blueprint as far as the state being in a budget crisis and the governor saying we might need to pause it? Will that not come out till they get through legislative?
Yes, and that's sort of coming this week, so we're kind of on hold, and if it's okay, when we go to the next piece and we go by pillar, I can share sort of when we get to the certain pillars where they were talking about it, if it's okay.
You guys all should have received the invite for the AIB meeting. It's 3 hours long, but you'll hear it.
So is that gonna discuss if they go into a pause, what that means? Is that what this is gonna discuss? Because what's that gonna do for us? When they go into a pause, does that mean the funding, that extra funding?
Sure. So
stop. So if we've already, my question is, if that extra funding kind of goes down and we've already implemented a bunch of the blueprint and now we don't have the funding to continue implementing the blueprint, what does that look like for us? Do we start eliminating the pre-K programs? Do we start eliminating some other things? Where do we go from there if we're now not getting that funding?
So if you hear what the legislatures is saying right now and the governor is saying, it's more of a pause.
Mm-hmm.
So as of right now, the discussion has not been about rolling back. So it's not saying that we're gonna ask you to get rid of the pre-K4 program. The discussion is, should we pause on expanding the pre-K3 program? Should we pause on the teacher collaborative time where we have to have an 8-year cycle of getting to where our teachers are only teaching directly in front of the class 60% of the day? There is funding tied to that. I think it's around $150, $160 per student. They're talking about pausing that right now, which would be for next year. That wouldn't be taking away from what we're getting right now. It just would affect our increase. So as of right now, they're using the word pause. It has not been eliminated. And I think part of it is because they know we've all negotiated contracts getting our teachers' salaries up to $60,000. How in the world would we ever be able to roll something like that back? The pre-K4 program is doing wonders across the state. That would be devastating to roll that back. That doesn't mean it won't happen. That's just not what they're discussing right now that we've heard publicly. Anybody can correct me. I don't know, Ms. Bent or Dr. Salem.
The legislative committee is pushing on pausing 3-year-olds. Keep with the 4-year-olds, but let's wait on the expanding and mandatory that 3-year-olds have all day pre-K.
Right.
Because there's no.
So the board members have a document that basically goes pillar by pillar and suggests what some proposed changes would be that we are supporting as Queen Anne's County, that we are supporting as superintendents, that I believe
the legislative
committee is supporting through NABE. And we didn't get there today, but the county commissioners would like to do a joint type of opportunity for the community to walk through these pillars and talk about how they can advocate as community members for certain parts. So, I want to help and advocate, but I don't know what to say. That's some of our community members. So if we can give them language to say, hey, let's keep our 4-year-olds. We've done a great job. Let's celebrate the 4-year-olds, but let's pause, as Dr. Kibler said, on expanding 3-year-olds because we don't have the funding source in place yet to do that. So those are some things that our community can advocate for us on our behalf. And so we have a document prepared that we're shared with the commissioners yesterday. The board members have it today, and we'll talk collectively about how we can provide an opportunity for our community to really engage and interact, and how can they advocate to do good things with the blueprint. We don't want to throw the blueprint out. We don't want to advocate to say, hey, because we've done some great things, and Dr. Kipper's, if we get to the next presentation, he's going to tell you some great things that we've done with it. But how do we advocate to, get the best out of it as we can when our limited funding is a challenge that we face right now.
Did you say we got a letter today that you?
You're holding it.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I'm like.
That's okay. That's it.
Thank you.
So this is a great conversation, and the next presentation just kind of organizes us pillar by pillar, gives a little bit of background again on the blueprint. I think I kind of start with these two slides every time in some form when I talk about the blueprint in general. But the blueprint does have 5 pillars. You see them on this slide. Borrowed this slide with permission from another district that uses this in community outreach. We have the early childhood education, that's pillar 1. Recruiting high quality teachers is pillar 2. College and career ready is pillar 3. More resources for students is pillar 4, and governance and accountability is pillar 5. So just again, a little bit of background where the blueprint came from and the governance of it. So it was brought about.
Commission.
We're blinking behind you, sorry. There we go. So it was brought about by the Kerwin Commission from 2016 to 2019. Recommendations turned into the blueprint for Maryland's future in 2020. Governor Hogan vetoed that. During the next session, it was overridden, and an additional bill that kind of supplemented it was also passed. The reason for the additional bill is because some of the dates had already started, and they needed to kind of jumpstart, add some amendments in there, and that's what the second bill was. But that became the blueprint. I did, for you all and for the public watching, the governance of this, a new state agency was created, the Accountability and Implementation Board. They are basically over the blueprint for the entire state. So Maryland State Department of Education even has pieces that they report to the AIB for. That is for, and I just linked a couple additional resources for you all or anybody that's watching as well. You can see the AIB's comprehensive implementation plan, for which we are a part. They have an About Blueprint section with some other bullet points to read, and just the AIB's website as well. On the AIB's website, you can find our implementation plan as well as the implementation plan of everyone else across the state, not only the school districts, but all the agencies that play a part. The first pillar is early childhood. I wanted to, when Dr. Salins and I talked about this, and a good way to present to you all, we thought we would highlight some of the successes and challenges we're facing for each of the pillars. One of the biggest successes in the blueprint in general, I think, is our full day pre-K for tier 1 4-year-olds in all elementary schools. So over the course of the past 3 years, we're in the 3rd year of this plan. All of our elementary schools now have full day pre-K for 4-year-olds, tier 1. What does tier 1 mean? That is students that are within 300% of the poverty level, are multilingual students, and are students, are special education students. They qualify as tier 1 students. We are, I can happily say, serving every tier 1 4-year-old in the district that wants a seat in pre-K. We went from 100 seats full day to over 300 this year. That is a huge success for our district and something to be proud of. So really excited about that. Another thing, our programs at the blueprint requirement, all of our pre-K programs are accredited. Actually, let me step back. Centerville Elementary School is going through the accreditation process this year. Why are they not accredited yet? You can't get accreditation until you have a full day program. So we expanded to full day there this year. They'll be accredited at the end of the year, no doubt. Another success this year, because as of right now, we have to operate under the assumption that we will have to start expanding to 3-year-olds. We did pilot a pre-K program for 3-year-olds at Mattapique Elementary School. We have 10 3-year-olds in that classroom. It's going really well. The teacher, the assistant is doing wonderful. The school loves it. The families are happy, and you should go check that classroom out at some point because it's awesome.
It's a blended program too, so.
It is a blended program.
And that's kids with IEPs and, okay.
Yes, so yes, you have students who do not have any special needs and students who have special needs. And
My youngest was in that at Ken Island, I think the first year after COVID, and it was wonderful for her.
wonderful.
Yeah,
It
it was good for her and her peers.
Yes.
So this is the first step to turn all of our 3-year-old classrooms, if we keep going in that direction, to that.
It's wonderful.
Challenges that we face and kind of talk about them in general. Space to continue expansion. I mean, if you think about it, we're only serving the Tier 1 students because that's what we have to. Unfortunately, that's what we get funded for. We don't get funded for the Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. If we were going to go truly universal, and sometimes with the blueprint, you hear that word universal pre-K, it's really not that. That's not what the law is written for. You're talking right now, like at Centerville Elementary School, we only have 4 pre-K classes. We would need 8 to serve, if you think about the number of kindergarten classes they have. If you start extrapolating that at every school, space to serve universally would be a challenge. One of the downsides to the blueprint, when we go back to the funding, is they did not build in capital funding for us to expand our schools. What they expected to happen with the expansion was that private providers would want to jump on board and take part in this with us. And the blueprint sets a lofty expectation that 50% of our pre-K spots in the county would be taken by private providers. In Queen Anne's County, we have 2 providers, a company and a at-home daycare, providing a total of 14 slots. 10 at the company. We're really excited. They're coming on this year. It's new. 4 at the in-home daycare spot. We have over 300 seats at Tier 1 students. We would need that many private providers. They are just not jumping on board across the state like Maryland started, like the Kerwin Commission thought. Why are they not doing it? It's a variety of reasons. One of it is the certification requirements for the staff, the accreditation requirements. They're hard. It's a lot. The pay they have to pay their employees is very difficult, and childcare centers operate on very small margins. I'm not a private provider. Those are some of the challenges that we're hearing on. And then to go back to Ms. Cape's question earlier with the funding piece, one of the pauses is potentially pausing expansion of 3-year-olds. We haven't heard any more, but that is something that all of the groups collectively are trying to push on the state government.
And we're trying to shift the responsibility of building those private partnerships to MSDE.
Sure.
That was another big one.
Any questions on Pillar 1? Pillar 2, this is the high quality and diverse teachers and leaders. So the successes, we successfully negotiated levels 1 to 3 of the career ladder with our Teachers Association this year. Our starting salary will be up to the $60,000 for the licensed teachers as of July 1, 2026, which is the intent of the law. We're also increasing the number of nationally board certified teachers, which is a piece of Pillar 2. Some of the challenges is the level 4 of the career ladder and some of the increased stipends that are put in level 4 in the law. So level 4 establishes a teacher leadership track for our teachers, as well as an administrative leadership track. In the teacher leadership track, there are stipends as teachers that are, it's basically written into the law of what we would have to provide. There's not a funding stream for that. There is a funding stream for the nationally board certified, but it's not in the same way for those stipends. So that'll add a cost to us. Just the funding in general for the increased number of NBC teachers, the state does kick in for us as our teachers become nationally board certified. But as you all know, we only get about 40% of the funding from the state, so the local jurisdiction has to pick up the other 60% of that. And then another just challenge in general is the decreased number overall of individuals going into the teaching leadership profession. And when we talk about some of the requirements of the blueprint, going back to a potential pause here is the 60-40 collaborative time, ensuring that teachers are only in front of the students actively teaching, like lecturing the class 60% of the time. There is funding attached to that because it would mean we would need additional teachers. There's two issues with that. It is expensive, but also we'd have to hire more people. And as we know, that pipeline is not the same as it used to be. And that's, if the 60-40 thing, if they would cut that will hurt very bad.
Funding will be tremendous.
$160, again, I should have wrote the exact dollar figure down, I'm sorry I didn't, but times 7,500 students, that's a lot. Pillar 3, this is the college and career readiness pathways. Some of our successes are AP class enrollment, students taking AP classes, taking AP exams, accessing dual enrollment through either Washington College or a majority at Chesapeake College is, it's doing great. It's really expanding. We've talked a lot about, we've had other presentations about our career counseling program for 6th graders through 12th graders. That includes our career coaches at both high schools, which just have gotten great reviews. I'm sure you've heard about that. We were able to have a very successful tutoring program using ESSER funds that really helped our students. You know, from watching publicly the board meetings last year, hearing the commissioners' presentations, how important the tutors were to the school. That also includes our math and reading specialists. It was a great service that unfortunately we're having to cut back on now because of budget, but have to highlight how good it was for previous years. We also had our comprehensive literacy plan approved, and there's another slide later about the comprehensive math plan. And the comprehensive literacy plan is in the list, the full list of documents of approved. The challenges here really are just the funding, and it's to be able to maintain and expand on the successes above. Just so the board is aware, any student, once they become what is deemed CCR, college and career ready, that triggers funding for them and support for things that they would want to access. That would be the AP classes, the dual enrollment, the CTE programs. It means that if they take an AP class, if they are CCR, they do not have to pay for the AP exam. That's $100 per class that they don't have to pay for. If they want to take dual enrollment, they can take up to 2 classes per semester. We get about $600 per student for CCR, I believe it is. One dual enrollment class costs about $450 at Chesapeake College. So as soon as they take a second class, we're over budget for that student. We have to let them take 4. It's a big expense. Another challenge that we're going to have, and we're actively working on this if you haven't met our CTE supervisor, Mr. Adam Tolley. By 2031, 45% of our graduates need to complete an apprenticeship or earn an industry recognized credential. We are actively working with all of our CTE programs. If they don't have a industry recognized credential, finding how we can make that happen, trying to work with the local community on finding apprenticeships. I actually was a speaker last week at the Queen Anne's County Economic Development Forum, and I was talking to business leaders. Some of them came up to me after I talked, talking about apprenticeships and how they can help us with the industry recognized credentials. So I'm confident we'll get on a path here to make that happen. We have till 2031, but that's a big struggle in the whole state, just different.
I have a quick question on that. So 45% of every student, or of all the students, have to have apprenticeship or recognized. What if they don't want to?
That's one of the
That's half
challenges.
your student population. Like, what if they don't want to go down that path and they don't? We can't force them, right?
That's
I mean,
No,
one of the
we don't get
challenges.
the money for it because the AIB will be paying attention and watching, and if we aren't meeting our numbers, we will get dinged for it.
So I think the question for us as a district too is making sure that we have programs that students are attracted to.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be welding, but there are industry recognized credentials in business, things like that. So it's making sure we have the attractive programs, and that's something that Mr. Tolley is working really hard. Are there programs that we need to sunset, to expand?
Right, we shouldn't be offering programs if they're not
They're not,
concluding
right,
with the
right.
certification.
But it's a great point. What if they just flat out say, I'm not going to do it?
Yeah, I think this
This
is one
45%
point.
is a lot.
It is.
But yeah.
I think this is one point where we feel like as a collective group that some of the markers in the blueprint, there was no data behind how the number was selected. So we feel that some of them are a little bit arbitrary in nature. They kind of, just like with the providers, that was a perfect thing. They had just assumed that about 50% would, be available, and they never really looked at rural communities to see. I mean, you might have those opportunities in Montgomery County to have daycare centers that are all certified all around you. But here on the shore, we just don't have that volume. But they kind of just blanket statement for the whole state of Maryland, just arbitrarily pick that without doing research. And so some of the markers in here, we feel like that's one where, did you do any research to see how many students are already going in, or how many, have you surveyed students to see how many want to go in, those types of things. It was just a number that was picked. That's the way we feel. So maybe that's a good point where, this year, not necessarily because it's not part of our legislative, that we're advocating for changes, but maybe eventually next year or the following year, that would be something that we advocate to change that number and maybe get more in line with what reality would be.
Sure. One of the holdups is that apprenticeship, that's really strict in what qualifies in as an apprenticeship. Right. So even just expanding that to be an internship or an externship, that would completely change the number of students that fall then into that 45%. Right.
So I do know we were recognized last year because we had the most apprenticeships on the shore.
Sure.
And that was a great feeling considering we are not the largest county on the shore. So it's great. Kudos to Mr. Tolley for his leadership.
There has not been a lot of talk necessarily about places to pause in Pillar 3 or Pillar 4. And I think kind of the biggest reason for that is these are the two that are directly supporting the students in the academic program. So there hasn't been a lot of talk there, kind of in the opposite for Pillar 3 and Pillar 4. As we get more into budget season, we'll talk about the different buckets. There's a bucket right now called Transitional Supplemental Instruction. It's a category we get funding for. It's basically to support learning loss from COVID. We get it's not a small amount. We get money in regards to the entire budget it is, but we get, I think, we get dollars for students in K to 3. That helps support our math and reading specialist positions we have. That program is supposed to sunset. I believe it's in FY27. So this coming year right now legislatively is the last year we would get that. That'll be a huge hit after, but that is on the priority list. It kind of falls in Pillar 3 and Pillar 4 to expand it. I think on the sheet that Dr. Salins distributed, it's under Pillar 4, but that's that category. Otherwise, Pillar 4, the big things to talk about our successes is we do have a community school this year at Sellersville Elementary School. They reached that community school status because of the large number of students on free and reduced meals. The community school brought guaranteed funding into that school. We have a community school coordinator. It also helps pay for the health professional there, which actually provided a relief. It's still local budget, but because of that additional dollars, it freed up some additional local money for those positions. Multilingual student support, one thing we did from the 24 fiscal budget to fiscal year 25, when we talk about that ESSER cliff, we rolled some of our multilingual student support positions that were in the ESSER dollars into the local budget to support the student population as necessary for Pillar 4. And really the challenge here is just ensuring that we get continued funding to support special education, our multilingual students, and the social emotional well-being of our students. Special education, it's well known across the state that districts are paying millions of dollars more than what we are actually allotted in special education, and the state needs to recognize that and do their part to increase the money that we have there. And then lastly, the Pillar 5, this is the governance and accountability. So this is just the oversight of the blueprint. Again, our big success this year is just that we have our implementation plan approved and all the pieces that go with it, and just celebrating the success of the teamwork and collaboration that went into that. Some of the challenges we deal with are the communication and guidance from the Maryland State Department of Education and the Accountability and Implementation Board. I can tell you, what does that mean? Well, as of right now, we are supposed to have by July 1st, 2025, level 4 of the career ladder complete. There's talk about pausing or changing what that means. We're sitting here on, January 15th, and we don't know what that means that we have to do. But anything we do for level 4, that involves contract negotiations. And we're all kind of, we just don't get that, we don't get communicated and directives timely enough to really be able to do the things we need to do them well all the time. The other big challenge here you'll hear about are the new fiscal reporting requirements. And what the blueprint suggests is that we need to start tracking every dollar that every student brings into the district back to the school level, and how those dollars that the students bring in follows them at the school. So you have your different buckets, and we can talk more about that with budget. But every student, they bring in certain amount of funding to the system, then we're supposed to, we have to be able to show how we're using those dollars specifically for those buckets. One of the things that's on the legislative priority is requesting that we can do that in the aggregate. So rather than if a student brings in 10,000 in one bucket, 5,000 for another, where we have to show that split at the school level, we can just show, well, if they brought in $15,000, we're spending that $15,000 at that school. This is a huge, you talk about financial issues in the state, the reporting requirements, the state turned over 6 chief financial officers next year. This is directly a reason for that. It's just the reporting requirements and the burden that's on the financial departments. It's huge. It's not an easy undertaking. There's all kinds of blueprint dates throughout the year. These are kind of the 2 biggest ones for this year. So we did have the pre-K to 12 comprehensive literacy plan. Last year, the comprehensive math plan is due this June, and then as of July 1st, we would have to have our full career ladder plan, which is level 4 of the career ladder. But again, we're kind of waiting in the coming weeks to see what that might mean. And obviously, I'll keep you guys abreast of what's going on for that. We'll always do updates like this. I'm always at the end, so everybody's tired. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'll do a dance next time.
Okay.
Sing a song.
Bring our one award winner back for that. He
Yes,
sings.
exactly.
No singing. Thank you very much. Legislative audit.
The board members put that on there, so whatever questions they may have.
I think we addressed it
Yeah,
in
we're
closed
gonna
session.
closed session.
Because it was based on contracts, which were individualized and would fall under our HR personnel report. Okay, that's
What
fine.
about, can we discuss the audit from Monday, or would that be?
That's an Adam question.
That, I don't think it's not done. He asked if we could discuss the performance audit for Monday.
I don't think it's come out yet.
Only two.
Hasn't come out yet.
It hasn't come out yet. So
Okay,
there
so
was
that'd be closed
there was
session.
a briefing, there was a briefing on Monday
We can-
to brief out parts of it. But the team that did the audit are not finished. They have to finish their actual final report
And we're
and
gonna
then
be
send
meeting
it
with them
out.
one more time.
Right.
Our
There's
team will
supposed
meet
to be
with them
one
one
more
more time,
meeting.
and then it'll come out.
And
I
then
do
it'll come out.
anticipate it should be out, after we meet with them, hopefully, I think we're gonna meet with them. If the stars align, it would be next week. If not, early the following week, we would work with them, and then I would assume that they would need another week or 2 to finalize. So I'm hopeful in the next 4 weeks.
Are we gonna go over as a board what you guys went over on Monday? You guys were in the meeting Monday.
Yeah, we sat and listened to what they
Right.
provided, and you got a copy of.
Right, I got a copy of it,
Yeah.
but, I mean, I can read it, but what they said, I wasn't sure if you were gonna kind of brief us on it.
They basically went through.
Just went through the slide package,
slideshows.
and they were like, it's not completely,
Okay.
yeah.
So my question is, this legislative audit, what is the plan forward? What are we gonna do about all these things in here that we were dinged? Because it's pretty embarrassing.
Well, I hear your comment about it's pretty embarrassing, and I guess I would challenge that. We are a business, the legislative auditors come in, they are not K-12 people. Some of their recommendations don't even align with the laws. And so we have to be careful about just making a very blanket statement.
Some of the recommendations are valid recommendations, and we certainly take those. We actually create a document within the reporting that says what we're going to do. Every single one of theirs, we respond to it and tell them how we're going to remedy that situation. But some of them, and I kind of would defer to Adam. He's worked with a lot of legislative audits before. And I would love your opinion on your thoughts about.
We can talk about specific ones, if there's a specific issue.
I mean, just, going off the letter that is in the forward before, they address, the first page where it's got Senator Clarence K. Lamb.
Yeah.
Where they just kind of point out and highlight some of the issues that they found in there, with Queen Anne's County needing to improve internal controls, accountability, payroll processing, POs. I mean, we're in a budget crisis, and this kind of points out why we are where we are at now. And moving forward, we need some kind of plan to get back on track, get a fund balance, be able to afford to pay things, have some sort of accountability when it comes to, POs and people being paid and ordering things. And it just, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here to unpack, and
Yeah.
We've responded to all of them, and it's in there. I mean, we're happy to, we've shared the report. If there are very specific things, we're happy to share that. But we have responded. We go through hours of meeting with them, and they present us with their, what their findings are, and we present to them how we're going to remedy those findings. And so I do feel like there's a started plan of action in there, and, the team's gonna have to follow through with.
I mean, some of these things were dated back to 2006. That was almost 20 years ago. Like, why are things getting repeated over and over again, and somebody isn't picking up on, hey, let's fix this. This has been a problem for a long time.
I would focus, the introductory letter has contained some broad generalized statements. I would focus on the, underneath the general letter. If you go into each specific item, I think those are more accurate description of what the findings and recommendations are. Like, for instance, a couple of the, the personnel related descriptions in the letter, I think, are a little overly broad and don't exactly capture some of the nuance in the law. But then if you go down to the recommendations, and those are a little bit more detailed within the 65 pages of this. But if you go into each section, it's a little bit more detailed.
So I have a question for you, Dr. Salins. You said you've went back and had discussions with the legislative auditor?
We have to by law. We sit down and have.
And then you sent them recommendations, or you sent?
It's in part of their,
Right.
It's part of the process. So they sit down with us and say, here's our finding one, here's the documentation we have. Do you have additional information that we need to consider for this matter? And this is our recommendation. Do you accept our recommendation to move forward with that? So we have to say, yes, we accept that recommendation, and we will implement a new policy as it relates to POs. And so we've been through that process with the legislative auditor team.
Can we see them?
That was gonna be the next question.
Yeah, can we see what you guys submitted back to them?
It's in here.
Yeah.
Well, can we get
everything is
like
in
a
there.
report? Is that what you're asking for?
Right,
A
yeah.
report of
Gotcha.
proceeding going forward, not,
I guess like the plan
right.
forward.
So it says, we recommend that I'm just picking one random, incorporate a statutory requirement, blah, blah, blah. So we have to, when we go through the process, we have to either accept that recommendation, or we have to say, no, we don't accept that recommendation because we don't believe that you're assessing the situation accurately. So if you see the recommendation in there, then that means we've accepted that recommendation and that we are putting in place something to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And, this is an audit that goes every 6 years. And, that's challenging when you have changes within your organization. So a lot of times we do 179 reports every year just for MSDE. And then you couple that with the 5 audits that we've finished in the last 5 months. Something like this, when you have multiple years and then you have a new superintendent or a new CFO or a new COO, I can see where something might be repeated because it might fall off the plate. And then, as I said, some of these things, especially as it relates to transportation, a lot of their findings don't necessarily align with K-12 and how we have to do things as it relates to paying people and going by the, help me out, Sid, the CP.
But you have the PVA, the per vehicle
That's it,
allotment for buses.
PVA.
You'll find that in every school system cited for many, many, many years. And I have yet to come across a formula in any school system that's turned one in to meet what their requirements are.
Yeah, I think the broad stroke, you would see that our report doesn't look vastly different than any other K-12 system audit for the legislators. But as I said, as they put recommendations in, we do have the right to say, no, we don't agree with that recommendation, and we're not, and they reflect that in here, and that actually goes to the legislation, and they'll see that. But if you see that the recommendation is in here, it's because we've said, yes, we agree that we need to work on that, or put in a provision, or add, a stipulation, or add a policy or procedure, and those types of things.
I have a question. In regards to the required screening before hiring certain applicants for positions involving direct contacts with minors, just obviously for myself and for the parents at home, just for concerns in general, in what areas of the school would those oversights have taken place? Just trying to understand where they happen in terms of the proximity with children.
So that's HR. I'm going to let, because Michael's the one who was in the meetings with us and actually defended that point, so.
Yeah, everybody that has contact with children gets background check, criminal background check, federal and state, as well as drug tested. We are one of the very few counties in the state that still drug test employees. Some of their findings, they asked for a core sample of employees. Some of the employees that they asked for, and I don't want to say I was contentious with them, but I was rather adamant that several of these employees were employed with us prior to 2019 when this law took place, so they don't have background checks. We're not going to take everyone that has worked for us and then do a background check. But since 19, anyone that has come on board with us, and I didn't start until 21, I can assure you, since I've been here, because I've had the rodeo before. You do your background checks because you certainly don't want to not do one and then have something happen, and then you get asked the question, was there a background check? And absolutely there was, and here it is. Here's the CGIS report,
This is because this is a 6-year, this happened previous,
Yes.
okay.
So wouldn't there have been a background check pre-2019? So it's just, what is?
There's some employees that have been here for 20, 30 years.
Right,
They
so
didn't do
they-
background checks back then.
Well, I think that's kind of a problem then. If we have, just because somebody's worked here for 20 or 30 years, they should have a background check. What if they have something in their background that you don't know about? That's concerning as a parent and a taxpayer and somebody listening. Just because somebody's been in a school for 20 or 30 years doesn't mean they're not a predator. We see it all the time, even with people who have background checks. So I
To
would
date,
argue-
everyone's had a background check.
Absolutely.
I think the recommendation isn't about the background checks. The background checks it's the HB 486 screening.
Yes.
That's what it is. So I think there might be some miscommunication about we might be mislabeling it. The finding was about the HB 486 screening,
Right.
not the background.
And that was that was the 20.
Right, that was the new
That
law
was the 2019
that you
law.
referenced. Do you want to?
But everyone has had the background check. It's the HB 486.
So there's a difference.
But we
between
have a
background
background check on them. It's if anyone has worked in another jurisdiction or another position in which they have worked around children, we send it to a previous employer. But if they've already been employed by us, we've already done a background check. We don't have to do that.
Okay, well, it kind of made it sound the way you worded it, that they've been here for 30.
Not the background check.
Yeah.
It's the HB 486 screening, which is a relatively new requirement. That is in addition to a background check.
Okay.
That's what am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, rest assured, people have background checks. Because we have candidates that would like to work here that do not work here because of their background checks. And I'll just leave it at that.
Any other questions? Procurement policy discussion?
That was also the board.
Yes, it was.
Is this a school
I
bus?
think it was,
Is it a school bus camera? Is that what you said?
No, I figured,
No, I brought up the procurement process. Reading through some of the legislative and some of the audit and some of the findings. We have a threshold for purchases without board approval at $50,000. And looking at the audit and actually looking at some of our policies from goods and services, I know it's slightly different and all, but previously it was lower.
It was 25,000.
Yes. When did that get bumped to 50,000 and why was that
I
done?
saw that
it
on
got
one of the board
bumped to
docs.
50,000 2 years ago. And it was done because, let's take facilities as an example. There are parts and pieces that come in and you would have multiple requests at the $25,000 level. If it's something that you take different parts of the invoice, you put it all together, they're $50,000 or less. Do we need to bring every single item, every single piece to the board? The board at that time felt no, and so they bumped it up to 50.
And also because the county is not at 25,000, the county
Right,
is
the county
higher.
was at 50.
The two documents say two different things. One says 25,
Because
one
one
says.
policy wasn't updated, and that was a result of having multiple CFOs and that didn't get done.
Right.
So it was 25. And
So the board did do research, they worked with the county, and the
Right.
county has a
And the other
limit of
districts.
$50,000, and so they moved the superintendent's
So
approval at
the
$50,000 to match.
Who
what
at
we
the
do in
county?
Queen Anne's, what we do in the county.
So who at the county has a superintendent at 50,000 or who
The county commissioners have their policy for when they go and approve for what's brought in front of them. And it might even be higher now, but I believe at the time we looked at it, I believe it was
It was
50. And I
$50,000.
believe, if I remember, that's why the board went to do the same as the county. Do you recall, Sid?
Yeah, state law back in, I want to say 23, raised theirs up to $100,000. And then at that time, the board felt that we were constantly bringing things in front of them at like, $26,000. They moved it up to $50,000. I can only speak for like the areas that I oversee, but for a compressor or pump that goes up, that's $26,000 and I'm waiting for a month to get that put in where we don't have air conditioning or heat, like severely limits what I can do. And again, I can only speak for the areas that I oversee. So they moved it up, I don't know, I guess it was about 2 or 3 years ago.
Just a couple years ago.
To $50,000. But as you stated, if you look in the regulations,
Right, the
those
regulation
numbers
needs to change.
where like you have to get, you don't need any bids, then you need 3 verbal, then you need 3 written with those amounts in there. That needs to be changed to accommodate where the threshold is right now.
Right, yeah, I was reading over that and it does contradict itself.
Oh, it
It
does.
does.
And that goes back to my getting organized again that I spoke about last meeting, getting everything that we have. I know we're busy, I know folks are busy, but the organization and updating our policy procedures, putting all our contracts, everything in one spot, we are far behind in that as a district. And I know it's a lot of work, but that needs to start getting done because here's a perfect example of walking into this scenario. In doing so, when we're making these purchases, I'm assuming they're coming from yourself or yourself agreeing to, when you say verbal, is that still the verbal quote compared to a written quote for the products? Is
So-
that still a procedure you're doing now?
If you look at and again, I'm just speaking for my area, but if you're looking at the regulations 310-1, those should be in there adjusted to the 50,000. So if you're looking at D, that should be 50,000. If you go up to A, that should be any goods per unit value of $20,000 or less. B should be really $20,000 to $30,000. And then C should be, $30,000 to $50,000 to align with those.
So should we not be getting written quotes instead of just verbal ones for record-keeping purposes?
But wasn't that an issue in the audit, was there weren't POs for a lot of purchases?
This isn't mine, I'm just.
No,
going
I'm
by-
just, no,
yeah.
that was a
But
question. I'm not saying,
Speaking in my area, yeah, I mean.
Correct, right.
We asked for 3 written quotes. Sometimes you won't receive one from somebody. They might, hey, I don't have time for this, or I'm too busy. But we.
they're
we
too
try-
busy to get our business at
we-
that point, right?
Oh, yeah, but sometimes, you don't.
Not of an air compressor
But,
goes out, a boiler's about to
Well, then
blow.
we can set in there an emergency. I
Yes.
mean, if the boiler goes out, then you should be able to
Right.
purchase something
There-
without
And if you
board
go through that, reading that, you are correct. There are
Right.
different times where you can do that.
So I want to go back to the comment about POs, because, there was a comment in there about POs, and the legislative auditors believe that every single thing we do should have a PO behind it. And we don't agree with that, I'll be honest with you. There are some things that we consider that are non-POs. So,
But we're using taxpayer dollars. Why do we not track
because some of
everything?
those are predictable. So like our electric bill, we shouldn't have to put a PO in every single month to
But
pay our
will you-
electric bill
would there
at
be a
Bayside Elementary
statement?
School.
Wouldn't there be something that shows this is what it costs us and this is what we paid?
Right.
We do have that.
Okay.
But we don't have a PO. We don't put a PO and have it come to you guys and say, hey, our electric bill for this month was $100,000. We need your approval so we can pay it. Some of those are considered non-POs. Sid, can you help me give another example of what a non-PO would be?
Well, I understand electric bill, that's a monthly bill, like that
I know, but
makes
that's
sense.
what I'm saying, the legislative auditors, they found that as a finding that every single thing should be a PO, and we don't necessarily agree with that because we're a public institution, and if we have to have something that's an emergency, we should be able to look at the best interest of the students and get heat on in that building and not say we have to mandate by law, put a PO, so we're just gonna have to wait. I'm sorry that we
There
don't
should
have heat
still
in
be
that
a
building.
Purchase order, you have, within the right to purchase something, you can buy it, but there should still be a,
Not utilities, or,
No,
No.
and not, and not
but there
if we
should be
have
an
something
order
emerging.
for, there should be an order, purchase order for tracking expenditures.
That's
I'm
how
not
your
saying-
CFO does their job.
I'm not saying electric bill, but if there's like an emergency, you need to buy a new boiler,
You're
you
gonna get
buy
a
it, but there should still be a quote with a purchase
Yeah,
order.
we.
Correct.
We do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so that's
Some
what
of the
we're
items-
saying, everything like that needs to have a purchase order, but hasn't been everything.
I think what she's trying to say is, they said everything.
Everything, every single
They,
thing.
every single thing we pay
Regardless of whether
for,
we
which,
pay.
which audit,
should have a
commissioners or
portion-
the state?
the legislative audit.
So you'll see that in the finding, that they said that not everything has a PO, that's why. So there is what I'm just trying to suggest is there a little bit of history behind their perceptions on things that don't necessarily align to public
Hey,
education.
some of the other items they were talking about were like water, sewer, telephone.
Yeah, the telephone bill, that was another one.
These all seem like they're falling into like utilities.
Right, like,
Right.
and you can,
Well, those were the areas, if you go through and look at
Right.
part of it,
That
that
they
were
cited the
cited, of like,
findings, right.
where's your PO with that? And the question comes, okay, do we constantly go back and change the PO for,
Every
I'm just
month.
making this up. It's not uncommon for a high school to use $25,000 worth of electric a month.
But could we specify utilities and like purchase goods or things?
Legislative audit doesn't distinguish
Well,
that. That would be great if they did,
we'll step
because we
outside
could
of-
agree with that.
Yeah, can we,
Stepping outside of the legislative audit.
in terms of moving
I'm
forward
talking
for
about
better
moving forward
efficiency?
For better bookkeeping and better efficiency in tracking our expenditures, because we're in a budget crisis. So to fix our budget crisis, if we get on track with actually going through with the purchase orders, I understand utilities is something separate.
Right, well, so
That's fine.
we do purchase orders for everything, except for things that are like utilities, phone bills and things like that, that aren't gonna be exactly the same amount of money each time. So the electric bill at Ken Island High School might be $25,420.
Again, it's just like our normal house. We
or-
understand that aspect.
Right, so we're not gonna, so that's all we're saying. We do a purchase order for everything else, sir.
So
We
on
do.
top of this, so at the board meeting then, it wouldn't be an issue to bring up and show a report for all expenditures for that month then,
We
right?
do have that. We can offer that to you at any time.
Fantastic.
Yeah. we
And
have
then on
expenditure
top of that,
reports.
that we, yeah, that's,
I mean,
I'm asking those things because we haven't seen them yet. So
It's only
if we
your
have,
second meeting,
right,
too.
right.
I've
But that's
been
why I'm
here
asking,
for
it's
2
just a
years
question.
and I haven't seen them,
It's
so.
it's just an ask,
There's
I'm asking these
expenditure
questions
reports
because
on
we are
all-
new.
Yeah, but they're not detailed, like what he's saying. We see a line item, like, there's no detail.
I'm just trying to look at these line items, and I wanna go see, like, we're coming to the budget, hence why I raised my hand to be on the budget committee. Cause I wanna go and see these line items and see where we're at, because we're cutting valuable assets, when if we can go back, assets such as teachers and tutors and other things like that, which I'm well aware, you're a smart individual, you understand what's going on. But is there other ways that we can look at some of these purchases, or there's money being spent, I'm not saying maliciously, but spent when it shouldn't be spent in other areas, where we can start being smarter with our money? You know, being with the government for over 20 years in the federal government, there's so much wasted money in the government. I'm not saying school district, but government period. That we should be able to look line by line and see where the contracts are, okay, cool, we've been with these guys for 20 years, so we just keep renewing the contract. Maybe they aren't the best people to use anymore. Like, where are we spending the money? Let's see these purchase orders. Let's get on track, organized on every purchase order, so that maybe we can actually start getting back this budget. And at the end of the day, we can start getting back on roll where we're helping bring back staff that is needed.
So getting back to procurement, on an agenda item, like the desk purchase, how can we as a board be assured that it went through the correct RFP process? So I think that would be helpful, just, when something's put in front of us, because it's not our job to go through everything and look at it, but just to know that it was bid out and a high level, I guess that's.
Normally, we attach the,
Yellow sheet.
if you want them there, we can attach the contracts, the 3 contracts or the 4
I
contracts.
think that would be amazing.
On there, I mean,
Just so you could see them.
we have that in our, in our paperwork and all that stuff. I mean, that's not
Yeah,
a
I'm sure
problem.
they had that. That wasn't a question of
No.
mine. I'm
I mean,
talking,
it's,
yeah.
on our side of it, it's making sure that, like, we're comparing apples to apples when we're ordering something like, you
I
might
mean, I
have.
think you did attach it for the desks. It said like 653 for 200. I mean, I saw that, like that was attached to the one.
Yeah.
So does that count as 3 and that covers us then, even though somebody declines
did
to
you wanna
quote?
jump
Oh,
in?
yes.
Yeah, so what I can offer is if we're talking about a larger.
Mr. Berklow, can you come up so the audience watching at home can hear? Sorry, I apologize for interrupting.
So if we have, let's take the bidding of the central office project. When I do that presentation, typically I will provide a narrative of when it was put on the street, how it was advertised, the number of bidders. We did a pre-bid conference. I'll put that in the narrative. With the furniture, it's not necessarily that same process, because it's a much more defined scope, and we're, like I had mentioned, we're using the interagency cooperative purchasing agreement from one vendor. By policy and law, I could have just accepted that one number because it was through an interagency cooperative purchasing agreement. But what I was trying to do to kind of demonstrate a little bit of good stewardship with the financial aspects of things, I went ahead and reached out to other vendors to demonstrate that the ICPA was the best price when you start looking at other vendors who could offer the same product.
And what about they identified in here, which I've asked repeatedly over the past 2 years, the piggybacking of contracts. So I understand we can piggyback off of someone else's contract, but as a board member, I look at that and I don't know that they did their due diligence. I hope they did, and they took, the best bid they got, but we don't see any of that information. So sometimes it's hard to be like, yeah, let's approve a $700,000 contract because we're piggybacking. So is there a way that we can see what the other school district, like what bids they took in to?
Actually, what we would do, if it's desired, we can actually provide a copy of whatever that ICPA, whatever that agreement is in there, and they will go through and they will demonstrate, for example, Garland Roof, they're operating on an Omnia contract, which is a United statewide contract. They have a large contract that we can insert as part of the yellow sheet if that's what.
So we could see that, hey, these are the bids that this other place took, okay.
Absolutely. It's not going to be very well defined as far as what the results are going to be, because then you're talking about getting, it would probably be a ream of paper because you're talking about a nationwide Omnia contract. But I could provide the actual contract part of it.
Thank you.
And maybe somebody could just give me some clarification. In the legislative report, it says that our analysis of certain invoice payments over $10,000 during the period from July 2019 to May 2023 disclosed that payments to 200 vendors totaling approximately $100 million did not have established purchase orders. Is that, from what you were saying, is that all utilities?
Not, I mean, utilities, phone bills, yes, all the types of things that would typically fall, mostly in SIDS.
Because they put food services and healthcare vendor.
Well, food services, food services is not accurate because that's a source that was.
I'm just reading the report.
It's a food service vendor, so that would have been the payments to Sodexo. I assume, I don't.
There you go,
that's
you're
not my
right, you're
thing.
right, yeah.
I'm just-
So we had Sodexo for, I don't even know how many years.
20-some years.
20-some years, and that cost of that contract is very significant, was very significant. Now we do it in-house. So yes. What was the other one?
But the
Food
point is, we
service?
didn't do a purchase order because
I'm
we
just
had a
trying to
contract
understand the
with them.
definition of it based on kind of how things had been working. And it was that there was always a purchase order unless it was a utility, because those are variable things.
Sodexo is a
Those two
contract.
examples, I think, would be in some ways similar to I'm not an expert here, to a vendor, because we had a monthly payment to Sodexo. We have a monthly payment for our health insurance benefits.
But the board oversaw the contract and signed the contract
Yeah,
for
that's what that is.
Sodexo.
But that's what
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
two
But there was no.
are almost like an
Right.
electricity bill.
Yeah, and there was no PO for it because it was
No.
a signed
Right.
contract.
Exactly, yeah.
So we're at that point where the past is the past. So moving forward, I mean, we can sit here and go back and forth on the past, right? We're here to move forward, and we understand, we asked our questions on what was going on, defined what we thought a PO should be for and what it shouldn't be. So now moving forward, we need to update these two policies and regulations here and stating what we want to put a PO for. And personally, I mean, I think a PO should be put in for everything, but I'm all for utilities, like, we don't need to come in here and purchase. As long as we have attachments saying, hey, this is what we had for the receipt and the statement, this is what we paid. I agree, we don't need phone bill, gas, electric, such like that. Anything else, though, outside of utilities, I see we need to have a purchasing order. And it needs to be tracked, it needs to be put in a central location, along with our contracts. Those all need to be put in a central location with the 3 bids that were put onto it, who we chose, and the amount. I know we had that discussion last time. I want to bring it up and reiterate again. I think we've discussed it too at the end, that I was told to find the contracts. We can either go back in the meeting minutes or we can go to the section heads. That's unsatisfactory, 100%. If we don't have a central repository for our contracts, which are some of our largest expenditures besides the teachers, then we have an issue where we can't find it or we have to search around. That needs to be put in a central repository, especially when we come in budget season. We're making budgets. We need to know what contracts we have that we're going to be using, whether it's going to have every year it's going to increase or it's going to stay the same, when it's going to cancel, who we got to go for again. If it's only a 5-year contract, we're coming up, we need a new contract, who our new vendor is going to be. Things are changing all the time. So getting and organized, I've just noticed there's a lot of disorganization that's going on. And maybe it's not the POs, but that's just playing it hand in hand. And I think getting a monthly expense report for everything that is distributed to the board at the same time, so that we can all get on the same page and we're not getting discombobulated here, I think that starts in the right direction moving forward. And I think if we get this going and get more organized, I think that can help us just grow in the future.
Sure.
All right.
I agree. I don't see why anybody wouldn't want that.
Any more discussions on the topic?
We need to get the documents to match. The numbers are 2 different numbers, so we need to agree on a limit that can be approved without board approval.
So you want to change what's currently in place?
Well, the two documents don't reflect the same thing, so we either have to pick 50 or we go to 25, but they have to be the same number.
Wouldn't go up,
Policy
the
was
law
changed
goes
to
up,
50, and the regulation is within the purview of the superintendent that has not been updated.
the law goes up to 100.
Right.
And so you have leeway up to that point.
Right.
And, you know, as I think it's already been mentioned, but I just want to stress, this applies to contracts for school buildings, improvements, supplies, equipment. Emergencies are an exception. So I think that concern was brought up. Books, materials of instruction, those are excluded. And the intergovernmental purchasing organizations are an exclusion as well. I think that was brought up. So I just want to, so everyone's all operating from the same playbook. So you have that leeway to go up to 100 with the contracts for the areas that would be within your purview, the buildings, improvements, supplies, goods. So you just decide where you want to go and amend your policy and make your regulation consistent with that.
Make a motion.
So we're at 50,000 because you guys kept having issues, assuming, not issues, but multiple items coming up over it. So if we go back and we table that motion for the time being, and we go back and we see some of the purchase orders, and we can actually get some background and see what some of these costs, and see how minor some of them were, and then we do an analysis to see if 25 or 50,000 might be there, instead of going straight now. I think if we look at some of the purchases or previous ones to see like what some of those purchases were from the 25 to 50,000 range, where we would have had a vote on it prior to, before we actually make a decision.
Realistically speaking, how long would it take to get all items that were approved under $50,000 in your hands before it's pointless? If the whole point is understanding what was spent under $50,000 to see if we need to change it, that could take months.
No, I
I
don't.
wouldn't say
know that I
every
can
single
answer that
item.
question.
Yeah, I wouldn't say every single item, but you guys talk about items having to be broke down down in $25,000. If you get a certain, so ask this question, if you're getting something that you needed to buy and it was $50,000, but instead of taking it to the board, were you breaking it down to two $25,000 purchases?
No, that's specifically, no.
Well, I was gonna say, I'm asking like, so
That's the point.
when you were
That's
saying.
the whole point, yeah.
That was the
No,
reason
I
why
didn't
we
say it
went to
like that,
50,
but I'm
'cause
saying,
Never did that.
how were you going about it before, or were you just bringing every single order to the
Just
board?
bringing it-
anything over $25,000.
So what were
Right.
what were some of the items that were reaching the 25 that was
I
getting
mean,
to the
Sid
point
just
where
used an
they're,
example of a pump. Like if you have a pump that goes out and it's.
but that's an emergency though, that should have been.
Not
able-
necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Time, I mean,
We put generators in before, because, we had to wait on things because we didn't consider it like an emergency, because we could fix it with a generator and have a temporary fix during the time that we get the purchase order in place.
I'm not saying we're trying to get more control, but we're in a budget situation. I just feel like we need to watch our spending. We need to, I'm not saying we're not, I'm just saying moving forward, I think we have a new board up here. You're retiring.
Yes.
We need to set a precedent where we need to watch what we're doing with the money so that we're not falling even more behind and we're losing more resources and people, and that keeps happening. We're gonna watch our good educators leave.
You do
We're in a
know why
crisis.
we are in this crisis.
I understand that, but we have to try to fix it some way, shape, or form.
and
We
I get
can't sit
that.
here and blame the state and the blueprint forever.
No, but we can
No,
also.
we can't, but you
we
have to
can-
understand why
yeah.
we're there.
And
I do
think-
understand
think
that,
we
but I'm
can
trying to find a
understand-
solution.
I think we can look at it, though, from the perspective of the budget. What is our biggest cost in our budget? And it's our people, right?
Right,
About
100%.
85% of
Right.
it comes. And then if you look at, so you have 85% of that goes to our staff, rightfully so, deservingly so. And then you have 15%, and how much of that is actual fixed costs that we have no control over?
Right.
Gas, electric, transportation, fuel. So you look at that. You start to really super narrow what we even do have control over and making decisions on. And that gets down to $500,000 worth of textbooks. So all of those purchases come through unless we were to buy replacement materials that happen to be $10,000 for an elementary school or something like that. But you get down to, you're very narrowed in the amount of purchase orders that I don't want you to get the perception that million of our $110 million is something that we have control over, because we don't.
No,
We're
I'm well aware of
contractually
that. I
obligated
understand.
at 85% for salaries. We're contractually obligated for transportation, fuel, telephone costs, you know what I mean? So when you really narrow that down, you're not talking about a lot of wiggle room. So I appreciate you wanting to come in and just trim everything down and really look at it and be more efficient. And I'm more than willing to sit down and look at those contracts with you or have someone provide that information. But I do also want to give credit where credit's due. You know, we have a COO who's been here for over 20 years and does a phenomenal job. We have Daryl Barraclough, who does a phenomenal job. We have really good people in place that are looking at purchase orders, that are looking out at vendors, and are selecting vendors that are going to bring the best to our district. We only have the best interest in mind for our district to save
never
money
once said
and
we
get
didn't.
that to our kids. And so I really want us to kind of try to focus on that just a little bit. I really appreciate the feedback.
I'm never saying they
but-
weren't doing their job a good job. Never once said that. Never once said it. Never said once that
Well,
I
we're
didn't have the
completely
best.
disorganized and we need to get back on track and we need to trim costs. And I hear all of that and I
But you
appreciate
are.
those comments.
But I didn't say they weren't doing their job. That's not saying they're not doing their job.
Here's a
So-
here's
so-
a
No, I
suggestion.
appreciate the comments, I do.
Wait. Here's a suggestion. Go back to what our budget was before COVID. Let's figure what that is, and then we see what the difference is, because all of the money we got that got us to this point with all the people that we have were funds that we got that have now expired and we're not getting them anymore. This is not a
it.
for-profit organization.
I'm not
It
saying
is
it's
a-
for profit.
It's
But
an organization that
we are
is
cutting
fed.
teachers and we are cutting a crazy amount of cuts. I get it. I understand it's not a for-profit. I'm not coming in.
We're
and
gonna
running it
lose
like a
good
business.
teachers, like
But
good
where
teachers
we-
are gonna leave.
I know,
and
but
then
we
we're
don't
gonna be
have the
left
money,
with.
but we gotta
we're
figure
not
out where
the-
to spend
but
the money.
We're not
is
the
what I'm
only
saying.
ones. Where are we gonna get the money from? Where's it coming from?
We're
That's why
trying
you
to,
have an
So we just keep
operational
spending
budget.
the same amount and calling it a day and saying, we're screwed?
We didn't
But
do
that's-
that,
but
and in all
that's-
fairness, if we look at the summary from last year even, and we looked at it compared to the 12 years prior to that in Sid's departments, nothing had been increased, but yet inflation was at least 4%.
I agree.
upwards of
Inflation is
4%
rampant right
every
now.
year.
Of
So if
course.
you look at it, that Mr. Pinder's categories, even though he has every bit of documentation that he came to the budget table saying, I need more money, he got flat funded. So if you flat fund his areas over a 12-year period,
Yeah,
then
it
you're
doesn't
gonna.
make sense.
Right, because
Yeah.
then you're always gonna be over budget in that
Right.
area. So last year, in all fairness, our team sat down and we provided a budget that was balanced, that increased all of those areas. So we did that last year, we brought it to the commissioners, but unfortunately, with the cliff of Esser and the cliff of, what's the other big grant, I can't think of it right now, the one that Amanda and them.
Leads.
The Leads grant money, all of those grant fundings went away, so it put us in like, almost like the worst, like, storm, you know what I mean? It was all these factors together, that for years, this organization did not recognize inflation. Well before I came here, well
You've been here
before.
4 years, so I mean, this has been an ongoing issue.
This has been
Absolutely.
a very ongoing
Right.
issue, and when you come in and you have woefully underfunded line items, we didn't even have a line item for furniture when I got here. We didn't have a line item for painting when I got here. We were not maintaining the way that we needed to maintain, and when you don't, then it catches up to you.
Right.
And just like with textbooks,
shows
we
in
are
some of the schools,
We
absolutely.
are so
We're
far
behind.
behind in textbooks. I
Right.
can't, and our line item is only $500,000, and for a district this size, it should be $1 million or
Right.
more. So this has been an ongoing issue year after year after year. And we come in and our team tries to make it right, but then we fall on our face because of the ESSER funds and the LEADS funds that we kind of pumped into schools to try to make it better. We bought cafeteria tables with some of our ESSER money. We bought some desks and chairs with that. We bought some books with it. I mean,
What is
we tried
ESSER
our-
money? I just don't know what ESSER money is.
It's just relief money that they provided to the districts to
Federal,
be able.
government.
Yeah, to be able to provide, and it had different guidelines. Some of it was just for tutoring, some of it was for, like for distancing and, you know, when we were.
Is this what the
buying-
what was the reading and math specialist funded by?
Well, some of them were local, definitely, but some of them were supported by some of our LEADS money and some of our ESSER money.
Tutoring was like ESSER 3. There was 3 levels of
Three
ESSER.
levels of
3 levels
ESSER.
of ESSER. It started like with like the cleaning supplies and
Yeah,
things like that.
PPE,
And then
yeah.
it started to shift. I think ESSER 2 was kind of a mix, and then ESSER 3 was a lot of like, you were able to use it for staffing and things like that. So like the tutoring was in ESSER 3.
Right. So I mean, in all fairness, like this has been an ongoing issue, and it's kind of like the perfect storm when, you know, Blueprint is not our friend right now as it relates to
Absolutely
that.
not.
And honestly, we are not. I actually sent the board 2 articles today. I'm sure you probably didn't have time to read them, but it just tells you that superintendents were sounding the alarm on this out of the gate. Out of the gate.
For the 3 years I've
And
been here.
nobody wanted to listen to us, and they just kept plugging through, and now every district is in an area where they're not gonna be able to sustain. We are not the only ones. I can tell you, Cecil County, their kindergarten classes are 30 and more. 30 in kindergarten classes. So, you know, we, at this point, I feel like in some instances should feel a little blessed, because did you look at our enrollment numbers now? Yes. Do we have a second grade class here that has 26 students or whatever? We do, but on average, overall, we're not ballooned out. But will we be because of everything that's going on? We're headed in that direction. We've done everything we can to kind of mitigate that. And now it's just getting to a point where we don't have any more resources to mitigate it. But we have cut and cut and cut every little place that we can cut in order to make sure all of our dollars are going into salaries and into helping teachers with supplies. And, you know, we've worked really hard. We've worked really hard on the budget. Have we had CFO issues? Yes, we had a CFO that up and quit in the middle of July 2 years ago. We brought on another CFO. He was from Delaware. Delaware, apparently their structure of money is extremely different. It's actually navigated at the state level, not navigated at the LEA. So after a month, he said, I can't. So he up and left. And we just haven't had that success. Dr. Kibler said it not too long ago. Last year, we had 6 CFO positions open in the state of Maryland because of the amount of, you know, reporting, 179 reports, plus all of your blueprint stuff that gets down to the individual student and to the individual school level. So those are all challenging times. But I agree with you. It's time to we have to keep looking forward. We can't look back and say, oh, well, we did it all wrong and woe was us. And, you know, no, you're right. We have to be like, we got to move forward. How do we move forward and create and develop a plan of action where we can do best by kids? And we're happy to get you information that you need, but I just feel like sometimes maybe getting a little more educated with the whole piece of it before we start kind of throwing out things that, you know, that have a huge impact. Or, and I appreciate you saying, hey, let's go get some information before we change it to 25,000 or before we change it to 100,000. Let's get more information. I appreciate that thought pattern instead of just kind of haphazardly just saying, you know, we've had problems and we're going to change this and make it this. So I do appreciate that.
So next week, we have a budget meeting. And moving forward, what I'm saying is we can sit here and talk about what happened in the past, and kudos to everybody and all the excuses of why we are in this situation. Yeah, right. It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
So if it's going to get worse, then we need to come together and sit down, and whether that's grinding this out day in, day out, we need to set these meetings so we can find a way forward where yes, it's going to get worse, but we can't keep operating in a deficit, because we're just going to keep going worse and worse and worse. So whether that's a possible or plausible situation that we can absolutely make happen, we got to do our damnedest to make it happen. And I know we have meetings with the commissioners, but that's one 30-minute meeting a month. Do we not think we should probably request that the commissioners come and we all sit down with them and hash this out a little bit more? Because one 30-minute meeting with the commissioners a month is not to discuss the entire school situation. That is way not even.
Well, that doesn't, I mean, we do meet, like our financial teams meet together more often than that. That's just for, you know, the executive team level to kind of bring up maybe some hot topics that are in the community at the time. So I don't want you to think that's the only time that we meet with their staff and their financial staff.
Can we set up meetings with the commissioners that is
So
strictly?
we talked to them when we were there yesterday. They are looking at the schedule. We need to have a conversation
It needs
It
to be more
won't
than a
be-
conversation, though.
it-
Please, commissioners, we need to sit down and hash this out, some way, shape, or form. It doesn't need to be just a conversation.
I understand.
It needs to be an actual working group where we go through it with them. Because there's mixed stories by commissioners and
Well, they have their own
them.
financial group that we participate in. And, I mean, so I don't know, maybe if you want to try to join that, I don't know if the commissioners will find that appropriate or not appropriate, or if that will be their decision. But maybe so you can get a better idea of some of the things that we are doing to communicate with them. We're pretty open with them. We actually have capital operational meetings with them. You know, we have different times where.
Had one last month.
Yeah, we have capital meetings with them, we have operational meetings with them. Our financial teams talk to each other. They have a spending and affordability that we sit on that committee with them. So there are some things that, it's not that we just meet with the commissioners for a half an hour. I don't want you to get that impression. We definitely communicate with them on a regular basis, and so please understand that we do work with them collaboratively.
I didn't say you didn't, but it doesn't, the perception and where we're going with the budget and working with the commissioners and what was said prior to and what's going on, it's just not aligning to where we're not getting to where we need to be. And there's a disconnect going on, and we need to figure out where this disconnect is so we can fix it.
Okay, I appreciate your perception on that.
We have 2 more items on this agenda, and I'd like to get them through so we could go back into closed session. It is already, not that it matters, but it's 9:11, and so there are some people we probably should release. So let's finish up our meeting. The next is the Citizens Advisory Council appointments. Are there members of the, I think what you're looking for, are members of the board that have names? Or do you already have a list of the people that are on the new committee?
So the history of this for the past few years has been, we've solicited the names over the summer, early fall to set the council for the year. This is your group that we have a staff member that runs. We certainly could add more people, but they're in the middle of it now, and that's fine. I didn't put this on here. I think we
need to add one board member, because the policy states that one board member is supposed to be on the CAC and the SSIC. And I don't think, for the past 2 years I've been here, no, we haven't had a board member.
That's not true.
That's not
Right.
true.
This
Helen was
Helen
on,
was
Helen and Mark.
And
At
actually
one
Dick went
point-
to several.
Yeah, they
And
were
Mr.
always
Smith.
invited. I can show you the attendance sheet. She wasn't always
She
able to
was
come.
the lead board person.
I actually had to change
And
the
then the
meeting
others.
dates to accommodate Miss Bennett's schedule as well. She didn't always attend, but I changed it because she had a conflict on the standing meeting. So she was not always there. She was always invited, and she was the representative.
Okay, so as a board, can we discuss who wants to be the representative on each committee, and then
It's only,
give,
It's only the one.
it's only the one.
it says the policy says the Queen Anne's County Citizens Advisory Council, and it says a board member, and then the SSIC, that one also says one board member. Is that not anymore, that council?
Again, so when these, this is historical perspective, I like being directed to do these things. So the Citizens Advisory Council is the board's group. I think, if I can speak for you, Dr. Salins, you liked the idea of it, also decided to make a school system improvement committee made up of staff members. We had invited Ms. Bennett to both because she was the person dedicated to the groups. She chose not to go to the school system improvement committee. That does not mean a board member, it's not up for any to decide.
But I also just want to say that the content was the same, and that's why she chose not to.
Yeah, it was the same agenda for both
Same
groups.
exact
Okay, but
agenda
moving
as she
forward, it
chose not.
says,
Let me just say, president of the board appoints the board member who's going to be a member of each of these.
That's
So
right.
if you'd like
We're
to go
happy
do
to
that
accommodate.
now.
And she did that, so personally, I got enough board activities to go to.
Okay.
I'm not interested. Anybody interested in going?
When we
You
go
want to
back into
go?
closed session, can we discuss this and then we
You
can?
should appoint it.
No,
now,
we
then.
should do it now.
Who's going to be?
Do you want to, do you want to be the member? Or does
Like, I
anybody
don't
else
even
have
know when these things meet. Can you give us like an idea of when they meet or?
Yes.
She's gonna have to, you have to come up to the mic. Yeah, can you come up to the mic, though?
She literally just plugged it in.
Yeah, no, watch
Because it
over
was
here.
going down.
I do have the 4 dates.
4 dates? They meet quarterly?
And this is for both or just the CAC?
They're the same.
This is
So
both. It meets
they're
six
the
times a
same
year.
exact group? Or?
No, it's.
Same night. SSIC meets at 4:15 to accommodate teachers' schedules as they are released
Okay.
from the buildings. And then the Citizens
Citizens.
Advisory Council meets roughly a half hour, 45 minutes after at 6 o'clock.
After that, same night, okay.
It's always the same.
Okay, and if I wrote them down correctly, our next meeting is on the 29th of January. And then we have, they're on Wednesdays, the 19th of February, the 26th of March, and the 23rd of April.
And then do any of them cross over with our board meeting?
No,
No.
they're
That was
all
the-
on Wednesdays,
the
that's,
point.
that's how we.
So I think when I originally made the meetings, I did the second Tuesday or second Wednesday of the month. And I always did Wednesdays because I was trying to accommodate the board. I mean,
Right.
but we had to switch it, I think, to the fourth Wednesday to accommodate Ms. Bennett's schedule, if I remember right. But anyway.
Yeah, because that makes sense, because if we go back into working groups and move to.
It's first and third.
That's
it's
why we
first
didn't
and
do the third yet.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I was trying to, because
Yeah,
I
the
was.
fourth Wednesday makes sense, absolutely.
So,
It's not always great because it might fall on spring break or like, things like that. So, I mean, sometimes it fluctuates a little bit. During the budget season, I think I had to pick some Tuesdays last year because there was almost a budget work session every week anyway, too. So it fluctuates a little bit, but the general idea was that.
so we can do a board member and an alternate?
Yeah, well, as a board, do you guys want to do one person for each or one person to go to both? I mean, it's not
I feel like
individual.
If it's the same meeting,
I feel like, you mean,
why would you go to both?
Well,
be
if it's
present?
the same meeting, why is it two different groups then?
Because one is the
Yeah.
staff and one is the citizens.
what are you offering?
One
It's
is
the
under the
exact
purview
same
of the
agenda.
board by law, through the law, and then one is just my purview that I felt like it was a good thing to get input from our schools and our teachers and our staff members and our administrators. So I felt like, but it's not by law. We don't have to have an SSIC. That was just something that I felt would be helpful for me.
Do people attend?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, yeah, no, I didn't know if there's a larger group of people that consistently show.
Snacks at the second meeting.
I volunteer for that.
What kind of snacks?
And Mr. Kibler does a beautiful job. I know I'm out of order, but I just need to put a pitch in. It would be wonderful if we had a board member there.
All right, so how about we have one for each?
Yeah, that's fine. That's who, if anybody got any takers, Shannon's out, so.
You got that right.
So this is at, where is this being held? Sorry.
Here,
Board
this
meeting.
Oh,
Board
gotcha,
room right
okay.
here.
Gotcha. I need a minute. My life is too complicated to do this on the spot. I need a second to process these
I don't
dates,
even know what's
to be
going on
honest.
half the time. I can do one if somebody wants to do the other.
I don't mind
just-
taking one. I just don't know right now which dates I can do.
Yeah,
I mean, can I offer this? Does it have to be, do you want to just make the commitment that a board member
Yes.
will be at each one?
Right.
And it may change month to month, and you guys will determine that month to month, as long as somebody.
Right, that's perfect.
Good job.
Sounds good.
perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Done.
Okay,
Flexibility.
I say, 'cause I
thank you, Ms.
could get to most of them, but I don't know about all of them.
Right, yeah, flexible.
Budget discussion, no.
Well, okay, so
think we
this had
already
been
beat that
on there
horse.
as a
Beat it
standing
to
item.
death.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had been on there as a standing item
Right.
that I personally, my apologies, probably should have taken off, but the bottom line is, I was just gonna say, we have a budget meeting next week. The governor's budget actually dropped today. CFOs are engaging in that tomorrow. It'll hit out kind of more publicly in a different format on the 17th, which is Friday. That'll give us at least a starting point of kind to understand what our state figures are going to be, but definitely not where we need them to be. And I think our preliminary assessment today was about $1 million more than where we were last year. Last year, we were at $995,000 from the state, but 273 of that was designated for our community school. And so if you subtract that out, it wasn't a whole lot of money. So if you add $1 million to that, we're not sitting in a place where we're able to do our enhancement packages and things like that that we have in contracts. So we have a great relationship with our commissioners. They have been extremely supportive of us. And so I know that they have a number in their head of how they're going to support us to get to where we need to go. But it's not over yet. We don't have any formal state, numbers yet, but that was just in what was dropped today. So stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Anybody else for public comment? Going once, going twice. So, future meetings, budget working session, January 22nd at 4:30.
We're going to adjust that. Do you want to
3:30. We're going to adjust that because of the topics, the length of topics. Motion to adjourn.
Second that.
Oh, wait. We're not,
Motion to adjourn, open session, move back into closed.
I second that.
So moved.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.